Progress Wrestling, March of 2017, chapters 45 and 46. We got the Progress commentators on the show today, folks, and we get into it all, baby. We got a fans bring the weapons match. How could that possibly go badly? But we also got the WWE World Champion here, Gunther, in a previous iteration, taking on Matt Riddle. We got the tag titles on the line. The belts are here. Finally got rid of that fucking shield. And overall, just a really eventful month for Progress. The ending of major feuds in their history. Maybe a new era, perhaps. We're entering. Don't know. But we'll find out together right here on the Apron Bump Podcast.
It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started.
What's up, everybody? What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Apron Bump Podcast. I am your host, the hardest part of the ring, Kyle. How is everybody doing today? I hope everybody's doing well. We are going to keep this intro nice and short because this is a long one. It's a long and fun one. Like I mentioned, we got major feuds coming to a climax. We got crazy stipulation matches. We got the women's title tournaments continuing. We got Pete Dunne continuing his reign as Progress champion, or does he? Don't know. We got Origin versus Origin Civil War coming to a head. Finally got the two sub-factions facing each other, which tears at my heartstrings, but we gotta talk about it. And of course, we got Jimmy Havoc versus Will Ospreay in a loser leaves town match. Not only that, but it is a fans bring the weapons match, which we get into all the logistics, everything involved, the match itself, the crazy spots that we saw in that match. We also get into a little bit of the pre-show where the commentators of this show went out in the where people were lining up for this show to see what weapons the fans brought. We see weapons that maybe didn't make the cut, weapons that did, and weapons that maybe were brought and weren't used, like that 13-inch black dildo. And speaking of these commentators, the very guys that went out and spoke to the fans about what weapons they brought, these very same commentators for Chapter 46 are my guests on today's show. RJ Singh and Callum Leslie. I've had both guys individually on the show before. Great guys, great commentary duo as well. So I was very happy to get them in the same StreamYard room and do a little reminiscing about Progress from 8 years ago? Gee whiz. But it was a great time with these guys. I'll put their info in the description below if you want to give them a follow. Both great follows on social media. If you're interested in hearing about the history of Progress Wrestling from Chapter 1 onward, well, I got great news for you, pal. You can go to apronbump.com. You can go to the episodes tab, and you can select Progress Wrestling, and that'll bring you to all of the chapters that I've covered chronologically. Chapter 1 through chapter now 46. Every single chapter I've covered in chronological order. I'm watching all of this for the first time in real time. And I know a lot of people listening maybe have not seen a lot of Progress. If you want to come along the journey with me, I strongly encourage it. It's a fun old time. A lot of stars of today are included on these shows. I mean, just for this episode today, we're talking Gunther, Will Ospreay, Tony Storm, Ludwig Kaiser, Pete Dunne. I mean, everybody's here, man. So it's a good old time. It's a fun time capsule of sorts. But with that, that's about it. Follow me on all the social medias, whatever, at Apron Bump. Join the Discord. Do all of that. All right, let's get into it, baby. Progress Wrestling, chapters 45 and 46, with myself, RJ Singh, and Callum Leslie. Good to have you guys.
Man,
thanks for
giving me the
do this.
opportunity to talk to one of my favorite people in the world. I'm not going to turn that down.
Yeah, I mean, have you guys stayed in contact over the years?
Ross was at my wedding.
Oh yeah,
Ross came up for my first wedding.
First wedding.
your first try.
Yeah, as Jim Smallman famous used to call his first wife, the practice.
Yeah,
Nice.
gotta have a practice.
Nice.
Practice.
Yeah, there was a wonderful moment back in when was your wedding, Callum? Was it 2017 you got married? The first one.
16?
2016, 17, one of those, wasn't it? And then there we go. Look.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, I had hair then and everything. It wasn't grey.
Oh my dad.
One
of my favorite people in the world.
When not long after Jasmine was born, actually.
Yeah.
So in 2018, when Jasmine was born,
it was the first Ali Pally show.
and you came down, didn't you?
But it was Wembley, wasn't it? It was Wembley.
That's it.
Because she was born the
a
August
month before.
August before the September Wembley show, which it was amazing.
Yeah, Callum actually came round though, and like we took Jasmine for a walk, didn't we? We went to the pub and we looked like the sweetest couple, me and Callum.
We did.
Pushing this pram.
I could see it.
Pushing the pram around town.
There was a point where Ross went to the bathroom. I'm just going to call you Ross this whole time.
Kayfabe, man, come on.
He went to the bathroom,
right.
And his name's Ross Jordan.
What?
That's his original ring name and legal name, obviously.
Next, you're going to tell me he's not a king.
Yeah, he went to the bathroom, and this slightly drunk woman came over to me and started asking about, because I was just sitting holding Jasmine by myself.
And she just left him holding the baby. I went, "Can you hold the baby? I'm going to lose."
Mine.
Wait, is this you were in the men's bathroom and a lady came up to you?
No, he was in the bathroom. I was still in the pub.
Oh, I see. So you guys didn't share a stall in the bathroom?
No. I was with the baby while he was in the bathroom.
Right. You could bring the baby in the bathroom, no? All three of you? You got to build that commentary cohesion somewhere, right?
Look, listen.
No, this was a Weatherspoons, and if you've been keeping an eye on social media, this is the kind of pub you can only take like Mercedes Monet and the Great Muta to. You know.
Yeah, right.
That's a wide spectrum of people, but
it's the most embarrassing thing I think I've ever seen is Mercedes Monet and the Great Muta, one of the greatest legends of wrestling. They get taken to a Weatherspoons pub.
Is that no good? I'm not familiar with the Weatherspoons.
No, you don't take people like that to the Weatherspoons. Just no.
You're in that photo, Ross.
Am I?
Yeah.
Is that Wembley?
Yeah, it's Wembley. It's the big shot that James took during the pre-show battle royal.
Amazing.
Oh, lovely.
I still have the video of your entrance from that.
Oh, you got a whole entrance, huh?
Yeah,
it was a big battle royal, and like 3 people got entrances, and he was one of them.
Oh, you were actually in the match.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew there was a pre-show match there. That's pretty sick.
Yeah.
Because you were doing commentary by that point because you were focusing on wrestling.
Yeah, so I'd left comms. Jasmine had just been born, and they said, "Do you want to come back and do the battle royal?" But yeah, that was like the first time I'd come back to Progress, I think, since I left in 2017, at the end of 2017, when I left comms.
Gotcha. So that was your second retirement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who can keep count?
I always thought, because when we talked about this on the podcast that we did.
Yeah.
During the show when I was chatting to people backstage, that what a journey it had been for you to have Jasmine be born just before this big Wembley show, this Progress show, and because you and I can say this to other people because you've talked about it on various podcasts and things, the journey that you'd been on to have a family, and the way that had intersected with the very beginning of Progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be on that show at Wembley with Jasmine.
And now I find myself 7 years later about to take another retirement because this July our second child is due.
Congrats.
We've got a baby boy on the way, which is
hell yeah,
incredibly exciting. So yeah, and terrifying because being a dad again in my 40s is terrifying.
Right.
Look, it gives me hope for our journey. So
there you go.
God, growing up, you're a father, and just a few years before that, this was you.
This was honestly maybe the most fun we had doing. It was so good. And
it was the best pre-show vid we did, for sure.
Can I take credit for the idea?
You should, yeah, of course you should.
Credit, blame, whatever you want to call it.
I think it was my idea. Because we'd done some of these pre-shows. We'd done some of these pre-shows. Like, I remember I did one, 43, the January show with Glenn in the production office, where Sebastian barged in and called everyone nonces and had to get bleeped out.
That was bleeped out? Nonces?
Yeah.
Is that like a really dirty word over there?
Just I don't think they wanted a wrestler to be calling everyone watching their live stream
nonces.
Right, call them cunts, call them anything else, but nonces is the I don't know. Maybe it's just nobody calls me a nonce over here, so maybe I'm just unfamiliar with the severity of it.
I feel like this was my idea because we were doing this, and I knew that they were, and this is the shit I do for a living now. I knew that because we saw that they were going to go out with a shopping trolley. That was the plan.
Right.
They'd acquired a shopping trolley backstage, and they were going to send some crew out. Alex Cupid, in particular, I remember, out with a shopping trolley to collect the weapons. And I said we should film that, and then that kind of developed into we should do that as the pre-show.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm quite proud of it as like a creative.
It was great. It was definitely one of the best pre-show vids we've done. It was 100%. It was so much fun.
No, yeah, I mean, it's one of the only ones I've honestly taken the time to watch, and I'm glad I did because, I mean, so March 2017, which is what we're covering today, the second show, Chapter 46, is kind of, it's not the main event, but one of the highlight matches is the Fans Bring Weapons matches, which is something that I'm sure other promotions have done this before. I've personally never seen it, but just conceptually, like when I heard about it, you guys mentioned it in the chat, and I was like, wait a minute, hold on. So in my head, like fans were just going to show up and be like sitting in their seats with like weapons, like barbed wire boards or like...
That has happened before, I think, when they've done this elsewhere.
I'm sure.
People will be holding them round the ring, and the wrestlers will go and grab
CZW or some shit, like just flamethrowers. And
I don't actually know where I don't know where the concept for the Fans Bring the Weapons match was, but this was always the plan, was to go get them beforehand, and then spoiler alert, they brought them back, and everyone went through it, and they sort of figured out, what to do.
What
and of
were
course, John Briley stole an iPad.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna ask because like I was digging through the Facebook back in that time, and I saw that there was like some sort of waiver, like just like guidelines for what you could bring or couldn't bring. Yeah. It's not up there on the website anymore. Do you guys remember like any of the rules?
I'm pretty sure like guns and knives were quite obviously like absolutely no
fair.
Guns, no knives, that kind of thing.
Right. Really, like not anything with like a sharp point. None of that sort of.
Anything that was genuinely deemed, an illegal offensive weapon by UK law, basically.
Really, like, you're going to have to stand in the street and queue with it. If a police officer came along and searched you, would you get in trouble? If so, you have breached the guidelines.
So I actually noted, because I watched the pre-show. Great pre-show, by the way. You guys are going, like you mentioned, you're getting followed by somebody with a shopping cart, and they're collecting the weapons, and you're interviewing people, like asking them what they brought and showing it off to the camera and things like that. And I listed off a good amount of what you guys picked up, but I want you to tell me if
Brother Paul, by the way, Brother Paul brought the leg with the Andy leg.
So was that a prosthetic leg, or was that just like a?
It was just like a plastic leg.
Yeah, okay. I figured so.
The mannequin leg, I think probably.
Yeah, and he'd Sharpie
mannequin leg,
on the underside of the foot, which
I didn't
was very funny.
That did end up used. But we'll get into the match itself, of course. But cowbell, somebody brought a cowbell.
It does provide that capability, right? People saw we went and got them, and then they used them.
Right. Yeah, because there were some that I saw them were used, but there were some. Let's see. Are there any that I did not see? Were the nunchucks okay?
I think they were maybe deemed too much.
Probably
I think-
an actual weapon. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were deemed, not entirely legal. So,
Yeah.
There was the double-sided dildo, of course. I didn't see that in the match. Maybe I just missed it. This seems like it could be a lethal weapon, though. Look at the size of this thing.
I feel like
I'm really
Jimmy hit
disappointed
Will
it
in the
didn't
head.
end up in the. If it didn't end up in the match, I'm really disappointed. That feels like such an obvious weapon to me.
Right. Atomic drop on it, maybe? Something?
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
yeah, that was what actually really I know it's behind the scenes stuff, but like it was really fun to watch them like pick through this shopping cart and be like, what do we do with this?
it was like watching two kids at Christmas, wasn't it? Like we wheeled the shopping cart back, and you just saw their eyes light up of like, look at all this, And we were laughing, because was there a grandfather clock? And that actually got
Yes, the grandfather clock.
Yes.
I don't know why the grandfather clock just sticks out in my head so much.
Because somebody carried it on the tube.
Yeah.
They used it, though. It's like you can't just like have a guy bring a grandfather clock and not use it.
Right?
So
They had to figure out how to.
Yeah. It was like, as I'm sure in America you would say the phrase "kid in a candy store." It was kind of that so
Yes.
much that their eyes lit up. They were like, "We've got to try to fit as much of this stuff in as we can and use what we can." So it was, they absolutely loved it. Like the amount of stuff they had.
right. It's funny. A lot of people brought guitars, which is interesting because wrestling guitars, not really guitars, but people are bringing real guitars, Guitar Hero guitars as well, which actually feels like it'd be more painful.
Well,
Yeah.
there's the guitar. Jimmy hits Will with a guitar as they roll in
Yes.
the ring, and it's one of those small little nylon string ones, and it made the foulest noise.
It did not explode.
And it
No.
did not explode in the slightest.
No,
It was.
No.
Yeah, that
I
was,
can confirm none of those were Jeff Jarrett style guitars.
I think we commented
They were
on it at the time. It was like, those ones are not full of powder. That's
No.
not.
Yes.
I mean, if we're jumping straight into this match,
Sure.
we're going. I believe this is the first time Will Ospreay intentionally bled in a wrestling match. I'm really
Wow, is
it now?
autistic, so I know things like that.
No, I believe you for that reason alone.
And ironically, I don't think it goes very well because, as we saw at Revolution, he can bleed with the best of them.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't go that well in this match, I don't think.
No.
And there's the
It's,
head as well. I'm watching it in the background.
Well, even like beyond the weapons, it's so ridiculous because take a look at this. What are we doing here?
So I
Do you know what?
You go.
I seem to think at the time I leaned into you and said, I feel a little bit uncomfortable about this. I'm sure
You did.
I actually leaned in. I actually watched, because I watched it. Obviously, we were sat to the side at commentary. And
No, we
I
weren't.
watched
We
this,
weren't. We cleared.
and we had no idea this was happening. We didn't
The
know
blood from this
about-
guy's head probably splattered on you, right?
Yeah, I was
Brains.
just like, I watched it, and I was just like, that's deeply uncomfortable. Like, that's really uncomfortable to watch.
Which I think
like,
is what Will was going for.
Yeah.
But had
Yeah.
there not, I don't, had there not been a shooting incident in London quite recently?
quite possibly.
Was this maybe Westminster Bridge?
Because I seem to recall Will doing a Assassin's Creed style entrance where it was a prior show where he had come out and he like does the assassin's hidden blade on like a couple of guards and takes it down, and that was very obviously, it was very obviously like a video game. It meant to look like Assassin's Creed video game. This just was really dark.
Is he going for a Hitman video game?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Just just some kind of real assassination. It just felt super dark at the time.
And
I just remember, I think leading into Callum, and I'm like, this is really uncomfortable for me. I don't know why.
This was a real stage firearm because Will was was doing theatre stuff at the time, as he always was, and knew people in that world. This was a real stage firearm. The funny thing about this is he only loaded it with as many shots as he needed, because that's the problem. I don't want to Ali Baldwin someone.
Right.
So, but you see it misfires on the first person.
He has to like recock it. Yeah.
And so he only ends up being able to shoot 2 of them. And he doesn't actually tell the final guy, which is David Francisco. But the guy on the left, you can see Will goes up to
this
him.
guy?
Yeah, that's David Francisco. The guy.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's Francisco. You see the towel.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
The
towel comes off.
It does. The towel comes off, and you can see it. Before.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, the guy next to him, Will leans into him and grabs his head, and you can see in Will's accent says, "Ran out of bullets," and then snaps his neck.
That makes it so much better that was like he had to improvise. He had to figure out another way to kill a whatever, I guess, druid of some, because to set the scene for anybody unfamiliar with this, is the weapons match is Will Ospreay versus Jimmy Havoc. Long-standing rivalry, of course. Havoc has done this entrance before where he has like these guys in the hoods come out, which hoods? I mean, they're black towels over their heads when they're wearing suits. But he's had this entrance with like the AFI prelude music, and they come out, and then Jimmy Havoc comes out. Well, here, the Druids come out, Ospreay comes out, and he assassinates them all with not a real gun, but like, I mean, pretty close to a real gun. It makes the noise, a stage prop of gun of some sort.
Stage firearm. Which
we've seen can go wrong, and it has gone wrong many times. And it's fascinating that Progress they don't even have a ring bell, I don't think, right? It's just like an MP3 bell noise that they use on YouTube or whatever, but they shell out to get a real stage prop gun, which
in
is
fairness, I think Will acquired that because Will wanted to do this. This would always
be... Did he sneak it in his jacket?
No, he would have cleared it with the...
Yeah.
Callum, I guess this would always be Will's vision.
Yeah. Well, I guess we were watching it from the floor because we're not actually behind the desk there, are we? So we must have been down on the floor watching it just before.
I think we were watching like between the curtains, but we'd cleared for it, because we thought it'll look ridiculous if he comes out and murders 4 people who sat in commentary waiting for the match to start,
sipping underwater, taking notes.
Yeah,
honestly,
good call. Good call.
We cleared for that.
Thank God it didn't look ridiculous. Yeah, thank God. But yeah, so that sets the tone for the fans bring the weapons match. Actually, you know what? Maybe we should step back and like kind of, because this is the second night of this month. The first chapter 45, they each had separate matches, which kind of builds to this. So maybe we touch on that just a little bit. But first, I mean, just Jimmy Havoc, Will Ospreay. Where does that feud stand in terms of feuds across Progress history? Best?
It's the one.
I mean, it was certainly the biggest at the time, and I feel like it was the biggest of the first phase of Progress's existence. Yeah. It was the biggest thing because obviously the whole Jimmy Havoc storyline was the biggest storyline that had traveled through the first era of Progress. And of course, that the kind of first marker they got to was when Will beat Jimmy for the title prior to this, which I think we may have talked about before. And which quite famously it was the one where the audio corrupted, and myself and Glenn had to re-record the entire show.
Oh, you re-recorded it? Wow, I didn't know that.
So when they had Jimmy versus Will number one, where Will won the title, the audio file completely corrupted, so we had to go and re-record our entire commentary, which was really hard the second time around when you're not there live watching it. Was really difficult. And so they, this I would say was, again, it was that next one, because I think by this point Will become the heel and Jimmy had become the face again by this point, by the time.
Yes. This was the third one, I think.
Yeah, the dynamics.
They've done the one at unboxing.
Right.
They've done the one at unboxing, which is
this is at least the fourth one, because they had 2 matches when Jimmy was the heel.
Because they did the 17 one.
They had the one where the ring ropes came off. He like took the ropes down, and so he couldn't do the 630. And then they had the one where he actually won.
Is that another one where Jimmy pulls his tights down? That's really awkward.
You're gonna have to narrow it down more. I feel like that's happened a few times. It sounds right. Sounds on brand.
Yeah. So this was the fourth one. The third one had been at unboxing, and it was the main event of the first unboxing. It was Jimmy and Will. So Will had come back. Will was losing every match.
He went on. I think he's still at this point on like a year-plus losing streak in progress.
Yes, he's lost every match since he's lost the title. Every time he's been able to come back, and then Jimmy has come back as a babyface. They meet at unboxing. Will then turns on Jimmy because Jimmy asks to team up with him to take on British Strong Style, but Will double crosses him with Paul, and we get to this.
Yeah, your memory is incredible, by the way. I mean, I've been watching this actively, but I feel like you just know this. That's impressive.
Autism.
That's what always made commentary really easy because I never had to remember anything.
Right.
Calendar at all. I just had to call shit in the ring.
This was also
just knew all the facts.
This was also because they add the stipulation mid-match of the loser leaves.
Yes.
Which was being done because Will had signed with Ring of Honor.
Right.
And like Ring of Honor were obviously this is pre-current ownership. Ring of Honor were famously difficult to deal with. At various points, Progress had tried to work with Ring of Honor contracted talent. For example, Brody King was supposed to be in the Super Strong Style one year because they'd used him on the America tour the previous year. This is further down the line. But Ring of Honor made all sorts of, because he was under contract with them for a bit, they made all sorts of demands. And because Will was going to be working with Ring of Honor, he wasn't able to do Progress anymore.
Right. Was that after this?
Yeah, so this was him finishing
he's very
up
sporadic at this point. Yeah.
This was him finishing up with Progress because he wasn't allowed to work for Progress, because Progress was, at this point, already signed to go on the WWE Network.
Yeah, no, at this point, they were about a month or two out of that original tournament. So they're already doing the thing. I mean, Tyler Bate is on the show with the title. They've done the Cruiserweight Classic stuff. So yeah, they're already, deeply threaded in with WWE at this point. But
it took so many years for Progress to actually end up on the WWE Network. But it was signed. The first I heard of it was the January show of this year. So a couple of months before this.
Yeah, I knew the network, like if you went back in I don't know if it's still on there. I don't know if it's still on Peacock, but I know at one point I was trying to watch it on the network and it started with like chapter 80 or something. So that might be around the time it started full time. But yeah, man, it's Will's pretty much on his way out here. Yeah, that could be a whole podcast in itself, I'm sure.
Because we're still in the using licensed music era.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're slowly like phasing it out, I think. They have I think it's Hot Tag Media is the producer.
Hot Tag started up making themes for guys. Great,
which is a lot of those like original like WWE UK guys. That's where their music came from. I think even like Marty's music.
Yes,
Marty Skrull's music. I think that was them too.
CCK's Progress theme was there.
Yeah.
But it was the Super Strong Style this year was the cutoff. That was when
gotcha.
They'd put out calls for bands to get in touch to work with them, and also some guys like TK and Travis had reached out to the artist and had actually secured permission to keep using their theme on the network. But then that changed. But then it changed back. That's why the music changes. The music policy changes like 3 or 4 times in the next 2 years of Progress. Because we ended up, the Strong Style one at Ali Pali, the first one at Ali Pali, we had licensed music again, just out of nowhere.
Okay. Is it one of those like ECW things where it's like, hey, let's use it and see if anybody notices?
Yeah.
I think it was because the network kept changing their mind on what they wanted. It was the WWE. It was WWE's end of things.
Right.
They had required, so they kept changing their mind, I think.
Dubbed music on wrestling shows is awful. Like if you want to, even if it's the original music, if it's generic, that's fine. But to like record over, I'd always just like, because you can never really hear the crowd and their reaction, and it's a little rough.
Progress did it very sparingly after they stopped using, when they moved away from licensed music altogether. I remember Rampage's comeback on unboxing.
Oh, you can't take Kate Breed away from him.
Well, again, eventually they did with a sort of sound alike. And then Jimmy's last match against Paul. They both had their licensed music back. So again, it's dubbed on the sort of official release, but they did put it on YouTube with the actual music. So you could just, pause your video, go watch it on YouTube. I don't think it's up there anymore, actually, to be fair.
Probably not. No.
Probably not. I mean, RJ, were you able to still use Snoop Dogg for you?
Oh god, no! I mean, no, not at all, not at all.
Did you even have any say in the music you came out at Wembley too?
No. They literally, when I came back at Wembley, and they were like, I don't know the exact wording, but it was like, "Oh, we've got you some music," and I was like, "Oh, what is it?" And they're like, "Something Indian." Okay, cool. Sure.
It's fine.
It's just great Kali's music you're coming out to.
That would have been a pop.
There you go. And I couldn't even really hear it because of the being in Wembley.
Because you were so over in the roar of the crowd, you couldn't even.
Honestly, the crowd just went ballistic, so I just couldn't even hear the music. But there's definitely a dull drum in there somewhere. So,
Right, yeah. Unfortunate for years, but yeah.
Only bettered by the pop from Madman Manson.
Yeah,
who is
absolutely
justifiably enjoying another moment of internet notoriety on wrestling.
Oh, the Ligero promos! I saw that last night. What a psychopath this guy is.
Manson is incredible.
He's very funny, yeah.
He's the best. He's incredible.
But speaking of incredible,
that was his last match ever, right? Because he was retired already by that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Like at this point, he had been like talking about retirement. He came out on one of the shows around here and had he did the rap battle with.
Yeah, he was retired by that.
Big Wavy. Yeah.
He was retired by that point. God, that rap battle, that wasn't.
So it was something. No waste man challenges on this month though.
Do you remember? RJ, the first Electric Ballroom show where you and Daryl were at the riots, and Madman Manson and Grado wrestled for the Bumbag World Championship versus Madman Manson's balls, which was 2 pickled eggs in a jar.
2 pickled eggs in a jar.
Sometimes I watch pro wrestling and I'm like, why am I doing this?
Why
is this my thing?
Great times. We've digressed. Massively.
No, it's fine. I mean,
we're talking about Jimmy and Will and rivalries.
Yeah. Well,
yes. Ultimately, we're writing Will off at this point, and he comes back and boxing not the next year, but the year after. Maybe he wrestles Travis. The only unboxing that I got to work on, I got my balls kicked again. that was when I got injured doing it.
You injured? Wasn't it just like your left one, right? That got injured?
No, because for some reason, my body decided the natural reaction was to drop like a sack of spuds. And the first time I just did it, and you can see Pete laugh when I do it, because he's like, "What the fuck is that?" And you came over to me, and you were very nice to me about it, Ross.
Put some ice on it.
Yeah, and then
Bengay.
So that was a heel move, and then at Christmas he did it as a babyface move.
Right.
And I again dropped and landed on my elbow and bruised a rib. And that was the day I decided I was retired from bumping.
Wait, so you injured yourself on both nut shots?
No, just the second one.
Oh, okay, I see.
The first one, he didn't touch me, and I just fell to the ground for some reason.
Right. As you would. I mean, it makes sense to me. Speaking of nut shots, we're working our way towards Will and Jimmy, but the previous week, I believe, we had Mark Andrews versus Will Ospreay. So this is Will's first official match since he turned heel, I believe it was. And Mark Andrews has a big month here. He's facing Will, and then he has a world title match the following week against Pete Dunne. Mark Andrews, Will Ospreay is another low key, I feel like, important rivalry in Progress's history. They had those incredible 2 matches within those first 5 or 10 chapters. Faced each other a couple times after that. So we have a match here, chapter 45, and Ospreay. So heel Ospreay at this point. I'm curious as to what your guys' thought, because it's, as far as my understanding, this is his first kind of attempt at being a heel, especially that first section of Progress, those first 20, 25 chapters, uber babyface, top guy, everybody loves him, and now it's a stark contrast, and he's testing things out. I don't know, what do you guys think of this, I guess his aesthetic, the way he carried himself as a heel at this point, if you remember?
I think Will was always super creative, and Will was always thinking about character stuff, was always all those entrances will have been his idea. All of that was his idea. And you also got to remember how young he is at this point as well. It freaks me out. So this is 2017.
Right.
He's a year younger than me. So he would have been like 24, 23?
Something like that, yeah. Born in 93. Oh, he's my age.
Yeah.
Math. 8 years ago. How old am I? 26? I don't know. So somewhere around there. He's a year younger than me. Wow, that makes me feel like I'm
I think it was.
Oh no, you're so old.
Well, now you're bald, people might actually give me it if they don't text each other, which for the longest time wouldn't have happened.
Right.
I mean, for me, I personally, and this is just my this is my personal opinion, and this had since Will has gone through his career as it has panned out. I always personally feel Will works better as a face, just in terms of his ring style, his character, things like that. I think when you put all of his composite parts together, I think it has always screamed a bit more face than it has heel. But I think with anyone, I think, as you're going through your career, there's very few people who can just walk the line as one and never dip into the other. So, like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat would be a good example where like someone who was just a perennial babyface. And I think it's good that Will has dipped into being a heel at times. I can't personally say I've ever really bought into him as a heel. I always just thought, because of what he can do, and particularly when he back then at that age, what he was physically capable of, I really felt he couldn't be anything but a face. But I guess by the time we did get to him and Jimmy had done that turn back into, because again, Jimmy, the biggest villain, came back and became the biggest face. I think that's probably why it worked in that context, because Jimmy had the biggest turnaround. So I think you were able to kind of accept that Will had also had the turnaround, and they could meet again in opposite places to where they'd met before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was a fairly simple story, which helped. Ultimately, what prompted the turn at unboxing, because Will came into that as a babyface, but also so did Jimmy, and what prompted that was jealousy, or disbelief that the crowd, kind of like MJF Hangman, didn't really understand why the crowd had forgiven Jimmy for what he tried to cut his ear off in the ring.
Didn't he try to cut his whole head off with like an axe?
Several times,
a couple of times, not just once, a couple of times,
and Will was like, "What? How can you? Why are you cheering him more than me?" And there was starting to be some some anti-Osprey, because you always get that, right? You always get a bit of pushback from certain fans, because it was a very smart, very online fan base.
Like, he's the chosen one. We're supposed to cheer him, so we don't want to cheer him. Kind of
thing. And like, he can't cut. Like, the whole can't cut promos thing was never true.
Yeah, that's true.
Genuinely was never true. And it's not that they're like world beaters at this point, but he was a better promo than a lot of guys who were around at this time. Even at this point, like the promo he cuts in the middle of the match, the fans bring the weapons, and the one the promo they have at Ali Pali later on, which I think was probably the best of Will's early career. It was never true, because he'd done theater since he was a kid.
Yeah, he has a confidence about him. He can cut a promo. I mean, he gets better than this, obviously, but here is not bad.
No, he was never a bad promo.
Yeah, and like you said,
I never understood. I think that was like an online narrative that started.
Right, that and the no selling and all that stuff. Yeah,
used to see people like in this first year in AEW be like, "Oh, people used to say he couldn't cut a promo, but look at this, he's really great."
Yeah,
welcome to paying attention.
Yeah, it's I feel like people kind of conflate it. If they're like a spotty wrestler, like Will could have been like in this time period, people are like, "Oh, well, he can't talk though," but like, he can if you actually watch the thing. Yes. But I agree. I didn't buy into him as a heel here per se, especially his style at this point. It's like if Rey Mysterio turned heel. Like his whole style is like popping the audience moves. Like, look at these amazing moves. Let me cheer for you. And that's kind of where Will was. And he was experimenting with different moves here, which this match with Andrews, there's a lot of like striking, more strikes than like big impact moves. Like, you know, getting in the corner and just pummeling them kind of thing. Yeah.
You see that with like NXT these days. Like Braun Breaker stayed in NXT a little bit longer so he could have a heel run alongside Baron Corbin, who'd worked on the main roster as a heel for many years, to help finish him off. So for when he eventually does turn heel on the main roster. So it's good that Will had these development opportunities. Really, is what they were. As you can see, we were breeding the stars of the future.
I mean, yeah, the stars in this month are insane, which we'll talk more about. But this heel run also could help elevate somebody like Mark Andrews, who's been a guy that was been there since pretty much day one, has been in the thick of it, but hasn't really been that top guy yet. But
I was always a Mark Andrews guy. Andrews guy.
So
I
good,
thought,
man.
I thought he was sick, and I think he was the first Progress show I went to. He worked Paul Robinson. Was supposed to be MK McKinnon, but he pulled out. And that was like the first indie show I went to.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the first indie show I went to, and I was always like, he's my guy.
Yeah, I was always quite disappointed, obviously, with British Boot Camp 2, which I was on.
Right.
Remind you of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's the one. That's the one Mark Andrews won, and I just felt that then TNA just did not know what to do with him, and I just think that was such a massive wasted opportunity.
It was it was just a bad time to have signed for TNA. Honestly, it was a point where they were not going to spend the money to fly somebody in from overseas.
And personally, I think WWE were quite wise to kind of hold out to get into the UK tourney, because obviously he wasn't originally announced for the UK tournament, and they kind of had some reserve guys who they did announce, and then obviously in the background they would just wait and see was Mandrews going to be out of his TNA contract and into the UK tourney, and thankfully he was. And I think that's great that WWE audiences got to see Mandrews as well, because he was still at that real peak of coming up and, you know, being as good as he is and was and is. Sorry. It still is. So I think that but I always felt it was a bit of a shame that original run in TNA where he had one boot camp, it was never really built on or capitalized. That was such a shame.
See, I was gonna say I always held out hope that we would finally get back to avenging him getting another shot with the world title after losing it in a couple of minutes at Chapter 10. I know we did, and that was the peak of my like Progress fanboy levels, because I remember jumping up and down when Mark Andrews came out at the end of Chapter 12 to challenge him for that ladder match.
Yeah, dude, that because the night he won the title was he beat Rampage Brown at the end of the show.
Yeah,
and then that's where Jimmy Havoc's run started. Threatened to light him on fire, or give me a title shot, or light this guy on fire, and then it's insanity. Like that's
just like hanging out in MJF.
Come on now. They're just plucking everything from Progress. It's nuts. It's nuts. But yeah, I mean, Andrews, Ospreay, you see these guys on paper, you know it's going to be a good match, and it was. I was kind of surprised, though. I thought Will might come out here, new character, new vibe. I thought he'd get the victory, but nope. Mark Andrews wins with the Vertebreaker bringing that out, or the Cop Killer, or Gringo Killer, whatever you want to call it.
The improvised finish because the top rope broke.
Was that improvised? Oh, well, no, because he went to the top rope at some point, even after it broke.
It didn't break. It didn't break off. It just wasn't fully stable, and they could do
tension went. I think one of the tensioners went.
Yeah. I don't understand.
Yeah, because it breaks after one of them hits the ropes.
Yeah,
they wrestle a little bit, and then Andrews does go to the top rope at some point and hits a Dragon Rana off the top rope for a 2 count. So he was able to go to the top rope, but maybe there was something more complex they had planned.
Yeah, probably.
It wouldn't even shock. Would have been the Spanish Fly off the top.
Yeah,
something along those lines.
Which you can't do if the top ropes are not.
100% would not shock me though if Will called Vertebreaker to Mark. That would not surprise me in the slightest.
Bro, you ever see Homicide wrestle, bro? Do one of them's. However he talks.
Would not shock me. Would not shock me if that's on the fly. He said, "Give me a Vertebreaker." Okay.
Man. That was improvised.
That is insane. A lot of improvising by Will Ospreay, but he's a theater kid, as you mentioned, so he's used to it.
Absolutely.
But then one more match before the weapons match, we got Jimmy Havoc challenging for the Progress title against Pete Dunne in a no disqualification match. So, like, right out the gate, this match starts. It's whatever. It's like, Pete attacks from behind on the stage. He's throwing Jimmy into the chairs and whatnot. And as I'm watching this, I'm like, I feel like I've seen this 1,000 times from Jimmy Havoc. So I kind of like started to tune out a little bit, but this match eventually grabbed me. I feel like Pete Dunne in a no DQ street fight setting works for whatever reason. He just has that he's like an animal, like a Neanderthal kind of guy, putting things in his mouth and all that stuff. I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to watch this or if you have any memories from this, but I really enjoyed this match.
You weren't there.
No, I didn't comms this one, did I? This was Manchester, wasn't it? So it was you and Glenn for this one.
Yeah.
Because I was at that point I was doing Manchester, and whenever you couldn't make London, I don't know why Glenn wasn't on the London one this month. I don't remember. Maybe Buddy Holly related.
May have been doing Buddy at the time. Yeah,
probably.
So that match, I watched that match, and I watched the tag team title match at the start of that show. So for the British Strong Style of it all, and this was the point, because we talked about the Origin at one point. We were sort of transitioning from the Origin to British Strong Style as the dominant heel faction. The Origin was on its way out, and British Strong Style would be the one, because there was a point where you would hear the Origins music 7 times a show.
Love it.
And it gets to that point with British Strong Style at certain points, particularly Super Strong Style when Tyler went to the final. And Trent and Pete both wrestled on that weekend too. So yeah, that match, I remember. I don't know what was going on at the start of that first show, that I was doing the intro and talking for the first 5 minutes, and Glenn wasn't. Sometimes that Glenn was just away dealing with things that I didn't know about.
Right.
That's the thing with running the show.
He's got it. Callum's got it. He does everything.
It would happen if a guy got hurt or something, Glenn would regularly go down and leave me on my own. Ross famously left me on my own on my first show.
Oh yeah.
Because Tommy End wanted to kick you in the head.
Yeah, someone needs to be
Glenn in the head.
Yeah, that's right.
Send RJ. RJ will take a kick in the face.
He wanted Glenn. He genuinely was like, "Oh, is Glenn not here? No, Glenn's not here. I wanted to kick Glenn."
RJ.
But RJ will take it, because RJ's only just retired. And I remember me selling on commentary like you'd retired and immediately lost all of your strength.
Your overall went down at least 20 points. Yeah.
Like a referee that's been bumped. You're just
still waiting for that RJ Singh Malachi Black match. Still waiting for it.
Exactly.
The Pete Dunne one is the one we should have got.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
I should have avenged you.
We're talking the next year here, but running up to the Ali Pally show with Pete and Travis, they fully ran out of ideas for what to do for one of the main events, and they end up doing a tag team match with Mark and Jimmy involved. It was supposed to be a Thunder Bastard for some reason, but it wasn't. That always should have been you and Pete, because Pete had beaten you up on commentary.
And he choked me out or something, or
he choked you out, and he'd hit me.
Wow.
Your pal. Actually, that happened on that show, but we could have done that. I would have done that.
Totally.
It could have been you two versus Pete, like Goldberg versus Chronic. Could have been that situation. And people always call you guys the Chronic of commentary.
Absolutely.
So
God, yes. God, yes.
I always used to jokingly pitch myself as a manager to Ali Armstrong.
I could see it. You're a guy that I could see taking, getting nut shots or getting thrown over the ropes or something.
Absolutely.
Noggin knocker, whatever, Hulk Hogan deal. But I could see it.
I don't know, he's sweating around out there like Brother Love.
Hell yeah, red face. Give it to me.
But I think, going back to what you said, like Progress did a great job of building Pete at this point. And I think
I totally lost my thread. Sorry.
But you'll have to, and Callum, you'll probably remember this better than me. But I think on comms we made such a big deal of like when Pete beat Zack Sabre Jr.
Yes, that first show.
And there was no hokey finish to it. There was no British Strong Style involvement, and like we really used. I remember us really like on commentary and management really using that match to kind of go, oh my god, Pete Dunne is the next guy because he has just beaten Zack Sabre Jr. completely clean. And they did a really good job of building Pete as that next villain role in a very different way to Jimmy. Like, we weren't getting the same kind of heel. We were getting a very different, new, fresh heel out of Pete Dunne, who was this, and again, it had that underlying tone of, not only is this guy being portrayed as a bit of a killer, a bit, very vicious, a bit of a killer, but he's also, you've got this background. He's also like the chosen one of he's Triple H's chosen one.
Right.
So you kind of had that undertone as well. And I think the things just mashed together really well. And you had a very different.
Give credit to
heel
Trent Seven for a lot of that. Like doing pedigrees and matches and shit.
Coming out with the WWE polo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trent was particularly good at that.
Yeah. Because we'll get more into that in their tag match for sure. There's so much there. But to your point about Pete Dunne and how they're building him, I agree. And especially he's able to hang in with Jimmy Havoc in a street fight scenario. I think that only builds on him. I mean, he's doing the webbing of the fingers, like giving paper cuts to Jimmy, and there's staple guns, there's loose strands of barbed wire where, Pete's like putting it in his teeth and he's like doing surfboards with it. I mean, this show, it's a plunder match, but it like I said, it drawed me in. Like, it was very violent. Drawing pins for you folks over there. Thumbtacks were used, getting shoved in each other's mouths, Canadian destroyers, and somewhere towards the end of the match, Will Ospreay comes out because him and Jimmy obviously still have beef. Ospreay has this barbed wire bat, swings it at Havoc, but Havoc counters, sends him to the outside. But ultimately, he's able to distract Jimmy enough to where Pete can use that barbed wire bat, hits Jimmy a few times, and hits him with the bitter end for the win. So Pete defends successfully against Jimmy Havoc, but we also are building towards Jimmy and Will. I think after the match, Will continues to beat down and says, "This has to end," and then beats down Havoc, and that's how the show closes. But that gets us to the fans bring the weapons match.
I was just going to say on that match, I remember when I watched this back, watching the tag match and this was my original point of British Strong Style. I was going really hard on them from like a babyface commentator perspective. I had no memory of doing that, but that was clearly a choice I decided to make.
You were distraught. It's okay. It was just your real feelings coming out. No
that was the end of 45. I also, it's one of my least favorite lines when I say that there's honor among thieves, because that's the opposite of the saying. But saying that like Pete had needed interference the last couple of matches, because as you say, we'd put over so much that he'd beaten Zach in the first title defense with no interference. But then the previous month they'd had stuff going on. 43 it was Jimmy the first time, Jimmy and Pete in the ballroom. Trent interfered, and in this match, Will had interfered. Trent and Tyler couldn't interfere because they had to go in first because they were doing an ICW show. That's how hot wrestling was at this point. These guys, a lot of these guys would work often if things you would expect to be towards the main event are openers, is because they're working somewhere else, and because you could do that and do really well for yourself at this. This was
Trent was the ICW champion at this point too.
Yeah. 2017, I think he maybe did like a cage match one when he went up from a Progress show. I don't remember, but yeah, this 2017 maybe as hot as it got. 2017, 2018,
right?
Guys were doing really well.
Yeah, because it's like the beginning of that WWE involvement, but it hadn't gotten to the point where there was like a weekly TV show and they were plucking them, full time. So
because I went,
sweet spot.
Was it this year? I think it was this year, like a month after this, to Wolverhampton. And I started going to quite a few Fight Club Pro shows because they were really firing. They were selling out 1,000 people in a warehouse in Wolverhampton. I went and saw British Strong Style versus the Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks in the Diamond Banqueting Suite in Wolverhampton, which is like a Asian wedding venue that had the best catering of any show I've ever been to.
An Asian wedding venue?
Yes. To serve
only Asians can get married there?
Well, just to serve the particular requirements for big Asian weddings.
Oh,
Because it's
see.
a big business there. And that place during COVID, they converted it into a weed farm. Like over
Why
2
not?
stories, they turned it into a weed farm.
What a transition. People
Sorry,
are just...
I mean, I'm full of random facts like this.
No, I love it. That's why
Throughout
you're
this
here.
period, I was so locked into, like, Progress was so much of my life at this point.
It was hot. I mean, the stars were there. Like the stars of today were here then. And it's a testament to how hot they were and how talented the roster was. And, we brought it up earlier. Jimmy Havoc, Will Ospreay, a marquee feud in their history. And it comes to a head here. Loser must leave Progress. Fans bring the weapons match. Jimmy Havoc, Will Ospreay. We talked about some of the weapons that the fans brought earlier, what could have gone in, what wasn't allowed in. But do you guys have any like key moments that stick out in your mind in terms of this match? I'll put this up in case it jogs any memories.
Yeah, well, I remember.
Was that the DDT? Was that the flip DDT?
The Essex Destroyer, yes, it was.
Yeah,
that did not finish the match for some reason.
Which Will was trying to get over at this point, the Essex Destroyer. And Jimmy did it to him on the table.
That's
off
right.
the top rope through a table.
I thought they
Once
did
you dig
quite,
out.
I thought they did quite a good job of taking all the silly stuff and transitioning the silly stuff into like some real weapons and some real violence.
Yes.
Stuff like that guitar shot, and then when you started getting the Lego and the drawing pens, and then tables come out, like that guitar was honestly, it was louder than the gun. It was insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, they went all out because Will was leaving. So yeah, this was.
I hadn't remembered till I just looked at this photo, but I remember actually. I'm pretty sure I did get a good reaction. The staff made a reappearance.
Yes,
I stood up from my couch, clapped. Yeah. Hell yeah, baby! The original Progress Championship was a weapon in this ring.
The original Progress Championship made a return, and it was
which I had prophesized on the previous show, because in the tag team match we were talking about how Trent didn't want the shields anymore; he wanted belts.
Yeah,
which we get on the second show, and I said, I don't care. I think it's great. Bring back the staff for all I care.
So you're pro props as titles. You love the shields. You love the staff.
I mean, no, they were ridiculous, but
what should the women have gotten as a championship?
Do you know, I think that was maybe the point where they thought,
yeah,
I think there's a reason why everyone else just does belt.
It should have been a ball gown, especially made ball gown.
They got to wear it to the ring.
They had to wear to the ring, but just like one of those really 90-pound Hollywood kind of deals where they can barely move in it as well. So that would have been pretty cool. But,
it's crazy to think we're still only on our way to crowning the first Progress Women's Champion.
Yes, we'll touch on that as well. But yeah, I mean, this match is, like you said, the first half of this match was it leaned on the silliness. I mean, you can see in here, there's that guitar. There's a cowbell that makes its way into the match. I think Havoc does it, the whole cowbell to the dick maneuver. There's a potted plant that gets smashed over somebody's back. There's like an antique food tray that gets smashed over Havoc's face. And Havoc responds with a big box of donuts to the face of Will Ospreay. There's some hits and misses here. The fake leg that we brought up earlier, the mannequin leg, was used in a super kick manner from Havoc to Ospreay. Just sensational.
One of my other favorite people and best friends that I keep from wrestling. Brother Paul.
There's a PS2 in the corner over there, I believe.
Yeah.
Remember it now.
Which is probably the heaviest PlayStation, so it's important. That's the PS2.
Yeah.
Then
PS3 is pretty chunky.
Are they? I think I feel like I'd rather have a PS2 in a home invasion than a PS3. Personally. There's only one way to settle this, is to have two face each other.
Face each other with a dueling PlayStation.
Hey, Progress, upper management, if you're listening to this, next chapter, let's get that going. PS2 versus PS3.
This was, and Will did the promo mid-match and stapled money to Jimmy, didn't he? And it didn't really work.
I think he was looking. He asked hey, anybody got a $5? And nobody had any money, or nobody really knew why he was asking. So he was like, oh, all right. And then he grabs one of the streamers and staples it to Jimmy's face, I think, or his arm, I think. Yeah. So it'd also be remiss if we didn't bring up the grandfather clock.
Grandfather clock.
Grandfather clock.
Like you guys saw this in the pre-show. Somebody put it on the train or whatever and brought it here, and it was used. So I didn't know how they were going to use it. I was like, they can't just go smashing through this heavy ass glass. So what happens is they like lean it up against the ring post on the outside. Will goes to throw Jimmy into it, but Jimmy stops it, and he takes like the door of the grandfather clock and like opens it and smashes Will, which is just pure comedy. I think that's the only way they use it.
It got you.
Yeah. I guess you can't pick it up and hit somebody with it.
Right? I mean, drop it on someone.
Yeah. Or I was thinking maybe use it as like a table, like take chairs and set it up like the barbed wire board was used. I think it was at this match.
Yeah. I just remember thinking, I don't care how it's used as long as it's used.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what
appearance.
I just need to see that grandfather clock in this match. So, but it's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm also just real little memory that I could just, if you look just below the referee, that is Candy Floss.
Candy Floss.
Oh.
It's as ringside crew, who obviously she went to sign on with NXT UK. Until she was unfortunately signed on with injury, and that was the end of her time in wrestling, which is a real shame.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
One of the lovely progress trainees that you would see in see. I mean, there are some going way back. Like you can see, I mean, with progress ties, like your Roy Johnsons were there all the time.
Wasn't wasn't Ginny like a extra in one of your entrances?
Yeah. My final entrance. Both Roy Johnson and Ginny were in in that entrance as well. So
wow,
which is incredible.
Now she's here fighting for titles.
And again, I remember towards the end of my time involved, the guy that was on the ring crew was Tate Mayfair's, who's now a top guy in Progress.
Yeah,
was always the most trusted and in charge ring crew guy towards that period.
I like it. But yeah, as you can see in this picture, Essex Destroyer from Jimmy Havoc to Will off the top rope through the table. Insane move. And I think it's once Jimmy kicks out, Will grabs the mic again, and he's basically like, this place ain't big enough for the both of us. And he says, loser leaves Progress. So he's just making stipulations mid-match. I guess he has that kind of stroke.
Yeah.
And Jimmy says, all right. And then they get back at it. And the ending stretch here, I mean, you got Will. So Havoc goes for the Rainmaker, but Will does like a backflip out of it and hits an Os Cutter for a 2 count. A barbed wire board gets brought into play, which the crowd asks who brought that. I don't know if it was a fan. I don't know if it was a fan that brought it, but I think it might have been.
That wouldn't have been allowed.
No, it was probably one of the very few weapons that was actually provided. By Progress. I think.
They had the table. Well, I don't know. I didn't watch it that closely, but I'm pretty sure on commentary, I would have said they were probably allowed to add some of their own as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you weren't allowed to build your own weapon because there was somebody brought like a cross with thumbtacks on the back of it, and they were like, "No, I don't think so, Tim."
Yeah, I don't think anything with like thumbtacks stuck on it made it. Which
there were a few. Someone brought like a cricket bat with thumbtacks on it, I think.
I don't think any of that made it because I think that was not within the rules.
Which is fair. I think we can agree. That's probably
maybe
fair.
Maybe the Guitar Hero controller had some. I don't know, but they were so.
A real guitar is fine.
Yeah,
that's fair.
But yeah, obviously the loser leaves, as we discussed, was because Will was signed with Ring of Honor, and because the WWE Network deal had already been signed. As far as I'm aware, in January of this year, that was the first time I heard about it, and it was like imminent.
Do you think they should have made that like a stipulation right out the gate? I mean, maybe you don't need it with Will and Jimmy out here. I think it's enough like reason to care. But
yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think like with most modern wrestling now, there's always a danger of putting a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat, and I think if you watch modern pro wrestling, a lot of it is just a hat on a hat. And I think it was enough of of what they were doing just without that was probably enough of a stipulation, as it were. I don't think it needed, but obviously they wanted to write it in to be able to write Will off, to moving forward. So I think in the moment it made sense. I remember feeling at the time like, this is fine. They're in the middle of their blood feud. They're coming to the end of their blood feud, and so why not have something like that? So yeah, I remember not being bothered by it, thinking, kind of, and it works the way to write Will off the show.
Yeah, and it works to bring it all back around again further down the line, because as we said, they sort of done it with Will as the ascendant babyface and Jimmy as the monster heel, and now we'd come all the way back around now to the other way around. So Will goes away for a bit and then comes back again as a babyface, and we get back to it in a different way, I think, with babyface Jimmy Havoc, sort of heel Will Ospreay. Supposed to be at Wembley, but that obviously didn't happen.
Right. And look, if there's anything that sticks versus RJ Singh has taught me, is that retirement matches don't mean anything. So I always come back to it.
And as I think I offered to John as an explanation at the time, this was not an officially sanctioned stipulation.
Right. Yeah.
They were really, if you think about it, they were both only abiding by, Willow was only abiding by it for the honor system.
Sure, yeah. So they have their way out of it if they need it.
I don't think they ever used it, but I do remember saying, well, they did just like make it up. It wasn't actually real.
Yeah. So yeah, the match continues. In the ending stretch here, Will hits his Essex Destroyer just straight off the mat, then hits the 630, which is pretty significant because that was the whole build towards their Chapter 20 match where Will won the thing because he couldn't. He like injured himself doing it on another show, and then he like was gun shy on using it, and then he finally brought it out. That's like this super finisher. So he hits it here, but Jimmy's able to kick out, and the barbed wire is still in the ring. Will just like wrapping it around Jimmy's neck. Jimmy counters it into a Rainmaker, kind of with the barbed wire, and then Jimmy Havoc wraps the barbed wire around his arm, hits Will Ospreay with 3 barbed wire Rainmakers. And on the last one, he's just like, fuck you. And then he hits it. And that gets the 1, 2, 3. So Jimmy Havoc wins and Will Ospreay is gone forever. Wonder where he's at. Wonder what he's doing.
What's he doing now?
I like to measure my wife's level of wrestling awareness, like by osmosis, just by me being around me. So when I was watching this show, I showed her Will's entrance on the previous show, and she was able to recognize that's Will Ospreay from AEW.
There you go.
Yeah,
he looks close enough, but a little scrawnier, yeah.
It's great. Like I was trying to think recently what the first time I saw Will, because I wasn't going to every Progress show in those early days. I think it was actually after his first return to Progress, because he gets written off at Chapter 7, way back in their rematch. He gets written off, and then he gets brought back at by Mark Andrews in the MPS. And then the next show, they did the FSU Swords tag in the garage, the final garage chapter. And it was incredible.
Yeah,
and that was the first time that I saw Will Ospreay live. So that would have been 2013?
Somewhere around there. That makes sense, yeah.
And now he's like the biggest babyface wrestler in the world. I've seen him at Wembley twice. I've seen him at Wembley Stadium twice.
And he's only 31. After all of that, he's only 31.
Insane.
Maybe at his peak now. Who knows? Who even knows at this point?
Well, could you do the 630 now? I don't think so. I don't think he needs to, and I don't think he would attempt it.
Yeah, I think if he had to, he would. But
we did a Spanish fly off a cage. It's not like he's scared.
Yeah, that's not the issue. But yeah, Jimmy Havoc, Will Ospreay, good stuff there. Can never go wrong. It's a staple of Progress, and I thought it was a good way to close it out, quote unquote.
Yeah, and it kind of leaves Jimmy in a, because Jimmy's lost the title match twice. This is kind of a down period for Jimmy in Progress, because he then goes on to he loses to Travis in the first round of Strong Style this year, and then he does the feud with Haskins into Alexandra Palace, which turns into a tag team, which is always kind of weird. I feel like this is kind of the peak of babyface Jimmy almost.
Yeah, I mean, that run, his title run, chapters 10 through 20 or whatever it was just so good. It's like hard to recapture that magic, I feel like, especially, you know, I don't know if he works. I think he's a good babyface. He's just nowhere as good as he is as a heel, though. I think it's the problem, but don't know.
And I think that will always be, for me, the defining period of progress. Yeah. That Jimmy's title run. I think that really is what put progress on the map, as it were, and really solidified their position and that. And I think, trying to capture that a second time, I think it would have always been difficult to kind of get back to that kind of same magic.
Yeah, right. They both, you know, progress was a big platform for both of them, and I think, you know, in fairness as well for Will, Rev Pro started using him. You know, he wrestled AJ Styles the year or so before this.
Vader.
Oh, I mean,
it's time.
Was that not around? That was around this time, wasn't it?
It was a few months before this. Yeah, pretty close.
Because I think the Manchester show of these two that we're talking about was when Will held court backstage and told us all his Vader stories.
Oh, really?
there were so many Vader stories off that tour.
Yeah. Because he was supposed to go back, but he changed his mind about losing. He was supposed to lose, and then they were going to come back and do a tag with Vader and Pete Dunne as Mini Vader.
Well, Pete still had the singlet made, because he was wearing it in like the match after that. Yeah,
and then the run-in, and it was going to be against Will and Ricochet. But because Vader held Andy Colden up, the rematch didn't happen. And Vader.
Wow, doesn't work for me, brother. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
So those Vader stories, I take, weren't positive.
Not particularly. Again, I'm not one to disparage someone who's passed on, but
sure,
I mean, you know, and I hope this won't get me in trouble saying this. I shared a car ride with Steve Corino around that time, and Steve, who was the most amazing human, I love Steve Corino. He just said, I'm saying the polite version, he needs a lot of handling. Vader needs a lot of handling. He needs a lot of caring for. He just, at that time, in that period of Vader's life, it was just non-stop complaining. It was like, it's too hot, it's too cold, I'm not happy about this, I don't like this, I don't like that. And it was just ongoing. I think every stop on that tour, I think he was just complaining all the time. Just you know, about
it was a bit of a sad end.
Yeah.
You know, to a real legend, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a sad end, really. That, you know,
but I'm sure
this opportunity to work with who were the actual hottest talents in the world that day. Like Pete Dunne, who's just getting involved with WWE, was involved. Like that was three proper indie stars. Could have worked with them, you know, but just didn't want to like work with people, I think.
Is there anybody that he wanted to work with but couldn't? Like a
I think there was. I think there was a single person I can think
trying
of.
to think of like a big guy at the time. Maybe like a
Walter.
Ooh, dude, Vader.
I mean, like Prime Vader versus 2018 Walter. Move me.
I'm moved. There's something.
That would have been something. That would have been.
Speaking of Walter, let's talk about Big Daddy Walter. Let's talk about Ring Kampf a little bit, because they're fairly new fixture in progress. I think they've only had like one or two other matches. At least Walter's been around a few times, but he's only like recently the Ring Kampf deal. Like what everybody knows Walter as is pretty new here.
He'd done the first Strong Style as Big Daddy Walter, and I remember at that first show, he was just getting the Ring Kampf clothing brand going, and he'd put like cards on every chair in the ballroom. Like went out and did it.
Hustler.
So he was hustling to get it done, and then had done the Atlas tournament where he'd wrestled. Who did he wrestle in that?
There was
wrestled T-Bone.
T-Bone was in it.
Because it was Joe Coffey and Rampage had the really good matches.
Michael Dante was in there.
Yes, the Reese was in one of them, wasn't he?
That's
Yes.
right. Houston
Reese.
Reese, T-Bone.
But Walter was like last place in that tournament. It was a round robin tournament. He didn't. He maybe got one win, but
And he ended up getting shoved in some weird tag matches because they ran out of time.
yeah, there was
as
like
well.
somebody couldn't make it, so they like had a tag match where like one guy wasn't even in the tournament, and it was like if this team wins, it counts. If this team wins, it doesn't count. It was a weird. I don't know.
They sort of had these issues happen when you when you're booking, especially at this time because people were working so often. They could get hurt at hours notice from your show. People, flights could get cancelled. So I remember there was one. There was a show that I think we talked about before, a Manchester show where Swerve Strickland was supposed to be on the cards, and Trent ended up taking his place in a 4-way, and this is when Haskins gave up the belt at 38. It was supposed to be Mark Haskins and Shane Strickland, but I think something got messed up in his travel from Germany. He didn't make the Manchester show to win the title shot, so they then pivoted to that 3-way thing with Jimmy and Marty.
Damn.
But yeah, that sort of stuff would happen, and there's multiple strong styles where it's happened,
right?
Where things have changed or people have got injured, like Haskins in the second one. Haskins wasn't well, and then Tyler got hurt.
Yeah, it was like in the middle of the turn. Like he won one match and then he like collapsed backstage and couldn't finish it. Which I feel like, I wasn't, obviously a part of the booking the thing, but it seems like he was primed to win it. Mark Haskins was that year, and then they went with Tommy End. Yeah.
That was the show where Mark wrestled 4 times because it was still 2 days at that point.
Yes.
So he wrestled in the scramble for the spot, and then they did the angle with Mikey Whiplash, which was a callback to the Rampage title win, where he pushes the ref pushes Whiplash, rolls him up, and then he'd wrestled Gibson. He beat Gibson, and then they did a really short final because everyone was knackered and it was a 10-match show.
Yeah.
I
remember watch that recently. It's a long show, but yeah.
And Tyler got hurt on one, not this year, the next year, I think. After he'd wrestled Chris Hero.
Yeah, that Chris Hero match is one of my faves so far in my progress watch through so far. So, but speaking of tournaments, we're fresh off of the 16 karat tournament from this year, where the finals was Walter versus Ilya Dragunov, which I recently watched, and man, oh man, I still think maybe the WWE versions weirdly are better, but at the time, it opened up a lot of people's eyes, I feel like, to Ilya and Walter, for that matter.
That match put Ilya on the map. And for me, I think the Pandemic match is the best. Just because as a piece of theater in an empty studio, I think it's incredible. But all their matches were incredible. But Ilya wouldn't turn up until Wembley in Progress.
Wembley, yeah.
This was kind of the peak of Walter as well. That he started becoming one of the most in-demand talents in the world. Was doing G and WXW. Was working everywhere, and is the next year they do the Walter Thatcher match, which is my favorite Progress match ever.
Really? That sounds fun. Just on paper.
The one where he chops him in the face. And
so that's why he looks like that.
And Thatcher gets a standing ovation for ramming Walter's chopping hand into the ring post. It was just beautiful pro wrestling.
Smart. He's a genius.
But we've got the Matt Riddle match on this show, and that's pretty good.
No, yeah, and like Ring Camp. Speaking of Thatcher, also a member of that. But we got Walter and Axel Dieter Jr. here, which for those unfamiliar is Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser.
Yeah.
Both of these. Dieter Jr. just lost. He's been WXW World Champion over there. I think he had just lost it at this point. Walter, fresh off the heels, like we mentioned, of that 16 karat tournament, a great run there. And like you can see, like when they had the tag match on the first night against the Hunter brothers, which is a good match. It's fine, but it's just so
Hunter,
striking
Hunter's
how like
super underrated. By the way, I know RJ is going to say this too, but the Hunter is
sure
absolutely incredible.
Love the Hunters. I worked in tag team matches against the Hunters so many times.
Yeah,
and they were just phenomenal because, in my opinion, because they did very little but made it look like they'd done a lot, and they were just I absolutely love working with the Hunters. They were so much fun to work with. And even recently, I think even about 2 years ago, me and Lee Hunter worked a match about 2 years ago, which was incredibly fun. Really good fun still. Really easy to work with each other. Jim's only just come back from a long time off. He had some real knee issues, but Jim is just now starting to come back and do a few bits here and there. But for me, I didn't particularly follow the European scene very much, so I hadn't seen a lot of like Walter and Axel. But I would be remiss if I did not mention at this point Callum's giant crush on Axel Dieter Jr. Like, when he came out, the first time I think we were on comms together and Axel Dieter was just in the ring, you could feel Callum melting just with adoration for this man. And he is a beautiful man. He's an incredibly beautiful man.
in 2017 he was good looking, but goddamn 2025.
Yeah.
Look, that strut he does to the ring now is just the drip is just wonderful. And now for me, Ludwig Kaiser is what I would consider my perfect heel intercontinental champion. There's just something about him that for me screams, that's your heel intercontinental champion. And I hope it happens. I really do hope it happens. But I think
so well
it was just really funny. I just would just look around and Callum was gone all starry eyed, just looking at him. It was brilliant.
But I mean, I was very also moved by his, like I said from very early on, I was like, that's a megastar. That is an absolute megastar.
Yeah.
He's going to go to WWE and he's going to make $1 bajillion because he looks $1 million. He's tall enough, which was always a problem. And he's so smooth in the ring. So smooth. Was the smoothest guy I'd ever seen live. So smooth.
I remember being really blown away the first time I saw him work. And
the Haskins match he has on this show, on the second show, is incredible. I mean, Haskins at this point was a world-class worker as well. But that match is so good. And I believe by the second show, we already knew he was signed. So, and he was, I have to say, also the loveliest boy. Honestly, so lovely. And was really friendly because I was there for all of his Progress matches up to this point. But because the next month they were going to do British Strong Style and Ring Camp as his farewell. And I wasn't booked. So I remember saying when he was leaving, he was saying, "I'll see you next month." And I said, "Oh, I'm not on the show next month because the other guy's doing it." And he sort of almost was like, "Oh, but that means you're gonna miss." And I think he was a bit like, "Oh, that means I'm not going to see you again because I'm going to America. But I can't really." Oh,
you broke his heart.
It was a nice moment, and I sort of was like, I mean, I know I do read things.
We talk about the great action of Progress and the great matches, but no one ever really talks about the most underrated love story between Axel Dieter Jr. and Callum Leslie that was clearly happening behind the scenes here. This
I think I need to put a poll out. Who's better looking, Callum Leslie or Tiffany Stratton?
I think he barely remembers me, but he was possibly the most charming man I've ever met in my life, and I was in love with it. Yeah. For the 4 times we met each other.
Yeah. And like I said, now for me, just his promos and his delivery as Kaiser when he was doing the Gunther introductions at Clash in the Castle and all those places where he was, I demand your gratitude. I'm like, this guy is so magnetic to watch on TV. Like for me, he's head and shoulders above so many people in WWE. Just in terms of his presentation, the fact, and again, I was watching one of his recent podcast interviews. You show his change in his physique since he went to WWE, and obviously Gunther's is more talked about. But actually, when you look at Dieter's transformation,
his face looks completely different here than it does now.
Absolutely, and I just think a guy, he looks great, he can talk, He can wrestle. He is one of the most complete packages for me personally. And like I said, I think it would be remiss if he is not at some point your US or IC champ as the heel, having a really good run with it. I really look forward to that, and I do hope it happens.
I think he's got the potential to be at the very top of WWE. He's so versatile. They've already shown in the things that he can do. You know, he's mixing it up in the sort of good wrestlers division on Raw with Pete. And
he's pretty prominently featured nowadays, so I think they're finally catching on.
I don't know if I meant. Actually, let me tell Hunter Brothers story first.
Please.
The one WXW show that I worked in London, they had to reshuffle the card. I think Mark Davis was supposed to wrestle a singles match against someone. Then Kyle was there anyway because they traveled together, so they were going to do a tag match. They said, well, we could do a tag, but who were we going to put them against? And Aussie Open said we could call and get the Hunters down here. And I remember being around for that conversation, being like, "Yeah, that'll bang. That'll be great." And it blew the roof off the dome. The one they did Chapter 4. It was a really packed WXW show.
Yeah, I mean, as an aside to that, when Kyle Fletcher first came over to the UK, he was actually kind of taken under the wing of the Hunter Brothers. They kind of mentored him, and they were taking him around shows and introducing him to people.
Oh, really?
I don't think Mark had come over yet, so Kyle was here a little bit before Mark came over from Australia. So, but yeah, it was the Hunter Brothers who took him under their wing. He stayed with them, he trained with them, and he was just, he was going around shows with them, kind of being introduced to the scene. So,
right, you want to talk about body transformations from here? Kyle Fletcher, my God, when he was a 19-year-old string bean in progress to where he is now. I mean,
yeah, again, credit to Yeston Reese. Yeston Reese is his
really?
coach. Yeah. So Yeston Reese,
delicious looking man. Yeah.
Oh man, Yeston. I mean, that's an entirely another podcast. Just me for an
He'll
hour.
be in shape forever.
Yeston Reese's physical appearance.
He will die aged 105, looking like that.
Yeah. No, I believe.
Yeah, I have a shelf of action figures of guys that I call matches for, and it's getting quite full. There's an Axel. There's an Axel on there.
An Axel, of course. There's an Axel action figure on your shelf. Of course, there is.
Love it. Is it Axel or Ludwig or Marcel?
It's a Ludwig, obviously.
Ludwig.
I see.
I'm slightly. I got a Gunther.
Callum kisses it every night before he goes to bed.
Wait, before he brings it to bed, I bet has its own pillow.
Yeah, I think there's. I counted. I think there's 5 wrestlers on each of these shows that are on the shelf. The amount of guys that same with you, RJ. Like, I mean, obviously I didn't wrestle guys, which is a totally different thing. But the amount of guys that you like worked on the same shows as, who now have action figures, is hilarious.
Incredible, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and I'll tell you my one gripe with the Hunter Brothers, though. They're tights. They both. It says Hunter on both of them. I know you guys are both Hunter. Put Lee on one, put Jim on the other. Like, I got it. You're the Hunters, but help me out a little bit. You know what I'm saying? The twins.
I don't remember which Hunters match it was, but I think we did do the commentary gimmick once of me not knowing which one was which, and having to ask every 2 minutes.
Most likely.
So this one's Jim. This one's Jim.
This was Jim. This was Jim. Yeah.
Might have been
it's
this
like
match. I don't remember. It
might be a Basham Brother situation where you could be just say somebody and who's going to call you out on it, you know? Other than them, I guess.
They'd wrestled Primate and Henry on the January show.
Oh, yeah.
I think it might have been
the New Nation?
The New Nation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then Henry just retired and disappeared one day.
Damn.
Yeah, but because that was when we're talking about the tag division in progress. That was the show with the South Pacific Power Trip Ring Camp match.
Yes,
which again is one of my favorites. Maybe my favorite tag match. I'm not sure.
I think that the Progress audience, I think that's what really opened them up to Ring Camp, because they come out for this Hunter Brothers match to a huge ovation.
It got both of those teams massively over, because you see here South Pacific Power Trip come in. They're basically massive baby faces against British Strong Style, and then they finish the job of the turn with the Sexsmith match here, and they're just baby faces now until Taz has to go back to New Zealand for the first time. Recently had to do again, hoping for good news on his visa. And then Travis goes on the big babyface run. So that moved them as babyfaces and established Ringkampf as both individually insanely good wrestlers who fit in so well in Progress. And then we get both of them in singles matches against Riddle and Haskins. I mean, yeah, the talent on this show. Like the fact that the Jimmy and Will match is the interval main event.
Right.
And
Crazy.
then we just do 3 world title matches.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. But yeah, I guess just to tie a bow on Hunters versus Ringkampf. I mean, towards the end, Walter, huge shotgun drop kick to Lee. Axel wipes out Jim with a European uppercut. And then they do their old European bomb finish, which Fabian and Ludwig ended up doing in WWE. But yeah, Ringkampf gets the win here. So they definitely, they're here to stay, it feels like. Obviously, in hindsight, at least Walter is, I know. But good stuff. Yeah, Hunters, I agree. Super solid, super underrated. Hope to see more of them. Because you said they're still going at it, right? So
yeah, still around, still working.
Hell yeah. And just kind of sticking with Ringkampf a little bit. You brought it up, Mark Haskins, Axel Dieter Jr. Solid. It was just a very solid match. Nothing that I particularly noted about it. Just really 2 really good wrestlers. Haskins is red hot at this point. People are excited to see Axel, and
his kid is over. Jack Haskins was over as all hell. So the I figured I did also wonder if you knew this context. We talked about this the last time that I was on. I do wonder now, going back and watching without all the stuff that was posted on Facebook and like other stuff that happened in the media. So like, not without knowing about the original short documentary, and that something Jack Haskins had said in that initial short documentary, which was then the title of that show, the Chill Out and Shoot Dinosaurs thing.
Oh, you know what? I
Which
didn't
then
even question it
led
for some reason.
Which then led to the Shooting Dinosaur entrance. But like, that doesn't make any sense when you're just watching it now.
No, I had no context watching it. No.
Yeah, that's where it comes. Yeah, it came from Jack, didn't it? Yeah.
That's a testament to how big the internet was in this era, and social media in furthering storylines, in providing additional context to shows, and keeping fans engaged in between shows. Was a big part of Progress's success. Like they were early on, like streaming pre-shows and things like that, streaming matches occasionally from ringside. They were always trying to do stuff like that. And I, for my sins, created and ran the infamous Facebook fan group. I hear the new one is worse.
Oh, God.
I hear the modern day one is worse.
How's that even possible?
Shots fired. But yeah, so I had no context on the dinosaur stuff. Jim Smallman just kind of prefaced it with, it's WrestleMania season, so we might see some WrestleMania high spectacle entrances. And then some guy with like a T-Rex costume comes out. Also Jurassic Park music. Mark Haskins with his son Jack comes out, and he shoots the dinosaur. A lot of shooting this month in Progress. Thank God they didn't get the guns mixed up. Jack has that real gun.
There are some times where the guys would make their own creative decisions where you'd think maybe there should have been a greater level of like creative oversight in this show, and maybe having
a filter,
like a kid's version of a dinosaur being shot after the actual gunshots was a real.
I think this is actually right before the actual gunshots.
It was prelude to the
gunshots. So we built up to the.
Yeah.
I'm wondering. I don't think it was. Did Progress have agents by this point?
What year are we in? Are we
2017, early 17.
March 2017.
Because I remember being an agent of the 2017 Strong Style 16. I believe I did some agent work on that, and there were several of us on that one.
I had no memory of you being there.
So
wow,
pretty sure it was
too busy looking at Axel.
Probably. I do remember you being there. You were there for one day. Right?
Whatever Strong Style 16 had Jeff Cobb versus Nathan Cruz. I think that was 2017.
That was the last ballroom one. That's this year.
So, and that was kind of the first time they started using a couple of agents at that point.
Because you did commentary one day.
Yes,
you did because we started. That was when we started experimenting with splitting the commentary for Strong Style.
That's right. Where we did different combinations on different days. That's right.
Because me and Glenn had done the year before, and it had nearly killed Glenn. I got most of the second half of the second day off because they had Marty on comms for a couple of matches.
Right.
So it wasn't as bad, but it was pretty bad. And then when we went to 3 days, obviously I was around by then, and then Matt was around, who was better than all of us. The best commentator Progress ever had.
Yeah.
So we wrote, I think me and him did the first day that year, and then the first half of the second day, and then we swapped over with Travis Banks and Flamita, and you and Glenn had no idea what was going on.
That was the commentary group?
Yeah.
Travis Banks and Flamita?
That would have been great.
I was about to say, that seems a little out of left field.
That's
but,
what Glenn and Ross took over from that point and did that.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, we switched in at that point. So,
and then I think I did the main event both of the other nights. I did all the main events. We did as a 3-man.
I think so. I think we did.
That was Tony winning with the women's title. So you did. I think that maybe the third day that you didn't do, or the first day you didn't do commentary. I think you were agent or something like that.
I was just agenting the first day. That was it. Yeah, that was it. I agented the first day, then
did commentary the rest of it.
But if somebody came up to me like, "Hey, I want to use a gun in my entrance," would you say no?
I would now. I tell you, I would now.
Yeah, probably for the best.
I have children. Okay, I have children now. So
right.
But it was interesting because agenting became quite a big component of Progress's creative moving forward from this point. And a lot of
but on that day, the day I did it, it was a fucking headache.
Because it was too much like your day job.
Yeah, I'm glad I never had to do it again. To be honest, I just No, I don't want. I'm not. I mean, I'm not going to say anything inflammatory about the wrestlers, but at that time, the wrestlers did not want to be told what to do, and that's.
I imagine it's a tough transition from agent to agent.
And basically, my one job on that first day was convince 3 out of 4 matches that they weren't allowed to use chairs. And you'd think that would be an easy job. On that day, it was not an easy job. Right? 3 out of 4 matches wanted to use chairs, and they were all first round matches, and 4 matches wanted to use chairs. One, and I will name one wrestler because he's very professional. Nathan Cruz. The minute I sort of went, I said to him, "I've been to management. You can't use a chair." Nathan went, "All right, fair enough." Yeah. And Nathan just backed down straight away. There were other matches who I was arguing all day. I was arguing all day about it. So I just thought,
They eventually had like different guys on different matches because like Lykos did it for a lot of the time while he was injured, and then after he stopped wrestling for Progress, Pete did it a lot. Eddie used to do it a lot as well. It's interesting, a lot of those guys, because I'm pretty sure that Pete did some agenting work on like NXT UK.
I think he's doing that some now. I think Speed.
I heard Pete's doing Speed. Yeah, I heard Pete is doing Speed. That was a terrible sentence.
Because he always put together a lot of matches for Progress.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of there was a bit of that WWE-ification of the kind of management of Progress, which was probably for the better. They sort of when they went to WWE and were working with them and saw how it was done, they kind of tried to replicate a lot of that with things like agents.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. There. Like, I was asked to agent, having never been trained for that role, or having never been in that role in any kind of official capacity. But by the time Pete was asked to agent and be a producer, he had been agented and produced himself.
Yes.
So he had a far better idea of how it was supposed to be done than someone like me was. So I think that was the right choice going forward. I think.
It wouldn't surprise me if like Pete was involved in like training Lykos for it as well. Like, he's always been involved in that side of things.
Right. No,
Pete will have a long career beyond actively wrestling in the ring.
He's a smart fella. He knows what he's doing.
Very smart guy.
2 other guys that may or may not know what they're doing are all Big Daddy Walter
Wow.
and Matthew Riddle. What a picture this is, huh? Looks AI generated, but this is something that happened. and
these
Atlas title.
These shows are amazing.
Oh yeah, the cinematic video and photos that Progress is doing at this point was just on another level.
I love James Russell White, but he did get all the hype. And it felt like, guys like Rob Brazier and Ollie Sandler and Robin, what's his name, Beyond Gorilla guy, who's still doing it.
Shout out.
The level of because it was so cool to be involved in BritRes, a lot of really talented people, photographers, designers, videographers, like Al, who was involved in the camera crew for Progress, now runs Progress. But he went on did work for WWE. He's very talented. He's just done a writing job on a Doctor Who audio drama for the BBC. Very talented writer and director.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're slightly diverting, but photos like these, and this is personal experience because working with a lot of these guys still on shows now. As you said, Callum, the photographers, the editors, the graphics guys that we have in the UK are top quality. They are absolutely top quality. They produce the content they produce and the way they make wrestling look is absolutely phenomenal. And I think on par with any wrestling companies in the world. Like, honestly, I think the amount of behind the scenes kind of talent that we have in the UK when it comes to producing wrestling content is just phenomenal. So, but get back to the match. I mean, Walter just looks unrecognizable there. He just looks like he just from to now to Gunther.
Different person.
Totally different looking guy there. And just oh wow.
I mean, this match is just this is representative of what this match was. I mean, look at that. The calves are insane on Matt Riddle.
Al, shout out Al on the camera.
The
cameraman Al, there he is.
I was just going to say what you were saying about photos and videos, bringing back around to what I was saying about social media as well. A big part of that was having incredible video content that people wanted to share and incredible photographs that people wanted to share on Instagram and on Twitter of how Progress became so popular online.
Yeah, dude, no company, I don't think, has ever made their wrestling look better than Progress did at this point. Just the way they use blurred vision and the smoke and the right amount of lighting where it's pretty dark but not too dark. It's just so cinematic the way they film it. And even the photos, you can pretty much capture that. So it's another, notch in their belt for Progress. But
yeah, this match here though, you got everything you wanted out of these two. Like, what do you want these two to do to each other? Just kick the living bells out of each other. I mean, look at that. You just don't get clotheslines like that from these days from people. And just look at that front row. Just look at the expression on their faces in the front row. As he's hitting that lariat, they are absolutely just losing their shit over it. Quite rightly.
I don't think you can adequately describe the experience of seeing a match like a Walter match live. The sound in a smaller venue, the way he would chop someone and it would echo around the whole ballroom. And you could hear it in the toilets because it would just reverberate around all the way. And it was
amazing, isn't it? It was.
And just being close to it. It was, it was. I mean, this was.
But I think Walter back then. I mean, and now in WWE, but Walter always thrived on those incredibly physical matches where it just looked like two guys who, again, it was still his gimmick. This whole respect of the ring, the passion of combat, as it were, that kind of style of wrestling. So, again, if you watch any of Walter's matches then against Zack Sabre Jr., again, it's all that kind of style. And I think people who could match Walter, Walter's physicality always brought out the best matches in him. And, people like Rampage, people like Riddle, people like Zack Sabre Jr., anyone who could match that kind of physicality with him always produced a really fantastic match against him.
Yeah, the Rampage matches. I mean, God.
The one where the ring broke.
You want to talk about wrestlers I'm in love with? Rampage Brown. I was always in love with Rampage Brown. I get seeing him in the garage. The first Progress match he had was against Nathan, and again they beat the shit out of each other, which is not something Nathan would always was known for necessarily. but they're great mates, and Rampage had just this funny sliding doors moment, isn't it? That he'd been in FCW when it was still a developmental territory, Rampage.
Oh, really?
But had not really got on with it and had decided to walk away and come back.
He left Florida, didn't he? He was in Florida for about a year or two, and he just wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah, he came back just as Progress was starting up. So this is Chapter 5, his first Progress match. And I think he certainly got a sense that like this promotion is a place for me. The style and the environment, the music's going to go over so well here. So that was Nathan very much trying to help put him on the map as well.
Screw Indie Wrestling. Shout out that faction with Mark Haskins, I believe, was in it too.
Yeah,
so,
real
foreshadowing.
Screw and defend. I was always angle grind pro wrestling.
Yeah, Manson. That was Manson, wasn't it?
That was Manson's one, yes.
What is it again?
Angle grind
indie wrestling. Yeah.
Interesting. Never heard of it. Is there merch?
There was a T-shirt. I remember seeing a T-shirt.
Sure there was, yeah.
There was a T-shirt of an angle grinder, and then the indie wrestling.
Because we had because Defend was very popular. Because again, you want to talk about guys who were creative and ahead of their time. Mark Andrews, merchandising wise, was
way ahead of the game.
Was way ahead of the game. And has to be said, so were you. You were always ahead of the game on merch. Always smart.
I did it right.
Always keen to bring out a coloured T-shirt. RJ saying because 90% of the T-shirts were black. And I always appreciate
every T-shirt was black. Every T-shirt was black. So, but yeah, no, I think like people like Mark Andrews definitely like changed the game for merch for a lot of British wrestlers. Yeah. They set the standard. So,
the Ring Camp was a big merch mover too. I feel like at this point,
yeah.
Do you remember?
And I liked the Ring Camp brand. I just thought that was very clever branding. Like, the fact that the logo is a wrestling ring, and the fact that the whole gimmick around the respect of the ring. I think it was brilliant. And I think it was like, again, perfect coming into a place like Progress, which was known for some of its hardcore type stuff, and being that kind of thing. So to then present a character who was very much no, we respect the ring. And I've always liked that about Walter's gimmick, and I think I was saying that recently as Gunther. When you look at his sort of intercontinental interworld title run, what I quite liked about the Gunther character is he is a heel, but actually he doesn't use heelish tactics. He doesn't overly use heelish tactics. You hate him because he actually just out wrestles people, and he's just a better wrestler. And I really like that about the Gunther character. Over the last year or two. So yeah, I think I've really enjoyed his WWE work. I think it's been exceptional.
For sure, yeah.
But and I think it's a wonderful evolution of where he was back here from what we're seeing, the kind of character and the wrestling he was doing here. That WWE style, he's adapted it really well into this Gunther character. So yeah, really phenomenal stuff.
Yeah. It's like when he dropped the Big Daddy, it's like something just clicked at him. It's he's in the very beginning of this iteration of Walter, and I mean this match with Matt Riddle is maybe my favorite of the month. Perhaps it's definitely up there. I mean, if you know these two, it's going to be a good match. Like Matt Riddle's MMA style just fits like a glove. It's a great foil for Walter's style. At this point, they were just kicking the shit out of each other for however long. It wasn't a super long match, but.
Do you know what was incredible around this time or previously in Progress to this when he I think he just dropped the Big Daddy when he came back and did the second strong style and he wrestled Chris Hero.
Right.
I mean, 2016 Chris Hero. What a year
run that was.
An incredible.
He was everywhere.
And he had some amazing matches in Progress. The Andrews match, and then the match with
Marty match.
Yeah, and that tournament where he wrestled against Walter and Mark and
Sammy Callahan, maybe did he wrestle?
Tommy. It was Tommy End because they did they did the tag. They played their tag music before it, and I don't think I watched Evolve.
Yeah, it was lost on me when I watched it. Yeah, but this image here in particular is probably my favorite part of the match because Walter he's working the ankle of Matt Riddle, which makes sense. He's not wearing any fucking boots. So he's just like crushing his feet and his ankles the entire match. And then at one point he has an ankle lock on. Matt Riddle's about to get to the rope. So Walter just gets up and like still grabbing his ankle is like stomping the shit out of Riddle's back as he's doing this, picks him up, German suplex, and then hits this lariat right off the ropes. And you can see, like you said, RJ, the crowd is just reacting to this whole sequence, and it just lays him out with this lariat. But ultimately, somehow, Matt Riddle's able to get the win here with the Bro Mission and retains his Progress title. But I know these guys have, at least a couple rematches down the line. But this is a great intro to this feud, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, they're going to wrestle a couple of times more this. I think actually 3 times, including the 3-way. Alexandra Palace. They do one in Birmingham where Walter wins the belt, and then when they do the show in New York where the walls were sweating.
What?
Oh, they did a show.
The walls were sweating.
They did a show in New York this year in 2017. The first time they went to America, they did New York and Boston. The New York show, and it was it was hotter than the sun in that venue. The walls were like condensation was pooling on the walls and pouring down. People were fainting. That's also the show where TK Cooper broke his leg.
Jeez, what a disaster that show sounds like.
It would. I mean, in some ways
yeah.
it was, but it also had like an incredible Walter Matt Riddle match on it. It was a really good show, but it was a crazy time. And then they had to like get on a bus and go up to Boston. Like TK left with Glenn in the hospital in New York and like changing cards on it was a crazy. But yeah, so they did that. They did a Walter Riddle match on that, and then they came back and did a 3-way at Alexandra Palace with Tim Thatcher.
Nice. I like it.
Any combination of those 3 was always good.
Yeah, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong for sure. Hey, Kellen, I think you said you had a backstage story about the Origin and their tag team match that they had on the second night. What are we talking here?
I seem to remember, because this was a very long show, 8 matches, 3 title matches, Jimmy and Will. Some matches were not getting a lot of time, and some people were not particularly happy with that. I think one wrestler's solution to that was to just do a bunch of brawling spots before the bell, and then that doesn't count to your time.
Oh, is that what this is? The bell didn't ring for a while.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
was this the end of the Origin? Was this like their end of Origin story, as it were?
Almost, yeah, because then Nathan does strong style, and then the next show he has a tag with Gibson, but then Gibson ditches him for James Drake, and they form the Grizzled Young Veterans, and the rest is history.
Right.
The Origin, the faceless, led to the Grizzled Young Veterans. Really, when you think about it,
I'm following that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, we got kind of the maybe the original Grizzled Young Veterans here, Nathan Cruz and Zach Gibson, the serious Origin, taking on Origin Banter Edition. The Bantosaurus Rex, Dave Mastiff, and El Ligero. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of brawling before the bell, to the point where people in the crowd are chanting, "Ring the bell." They're not. Because they're fighting like in the ring. So it's like, is this the match? Is this commentary? You guys can't speak because the bell hasn't rung yet.
Yes, we were strictly not allowed to speak before the bell. That was the rule.
That was the rules. The bell was our cue to speak. That's how they lined up the audio tracks.
That was the rules until...
Oh, that's so funny.
At one point after a music change, Glenn decided to change the rules but not tell anyone. And he would start speaking during entrance, and I was like, what are you doing? I didn't think we did that. There's a brief period where we did that. But yes, that was the strict rules. We did bell to bell. We did a little bit after bell. But...
Yeah, right. Bell, but bell. As soon as the bell rung, we knew that was time to talk, because that's how they cue up the audio. So,
gotcha. That makes sense.
So we were just sat there twiddling our thumbs for ages.
Yeah, I was like, is commentary here, or are they just not interested in this match? Maybe, who knows? But
I was probably somewhere being kicked in the face by Tommy M. So
that sounds right. That's par.
This was the ballroom show. Yeah. Yeah. So you were. Yes. Yeah, we were just sat there. Was this the one?
Yeah, we were just sat there waiting. Yeah, waiting for the bell.
Ligero had thrown his cape at you a bunch before this as well.
Yes.
And then he'd thrown it at me once when you weren't there.
Yeah. That was
Right.
that was his gimmick. At every Origin entrance, he would walk out, take the cape off, fold it up, and then just lob it at me. Until it hit me. Until eventually,
I love the Origin, man. For reasons like that, I love the Origin.
Yeah, and then eventually he came and just put it on me. When he had turned more face from Banter Edition, he just came and put the cape on me. So.
Now that's finishing the story.
That's it. That's it. I got to wear the cape.
Like I said earlier, we're kind of in a transition period. The Origin is coming to an end. Really, it gone through Brixton the previous year. The group had been together for a lot. I mean, I say the Faceless was only back to the first Strong Style, I guess, and even before that, we can talk about the Faceless one day if you want.
No, I don't.
What a time!
Very interesting time. But yeah, so the Serious Origin gets the win here, though, eventually, with a double lung blower, which I think is at least similar to the Grizzled Young Vets finisher. So it was very interesting to see. But yeah, I think Mastiff and Ligero are WWE bound, or at least like close to it, maybe. So I don't know if that's the logic here.
I don't think at this point. I think it's just
because were they both in the original tournament?
No, they weren't. I think they were on the radar at this point, though. They were they were on the radar. It was kind of a no. Do you know what? Were they not World of Sport?
Well, this is what I'm thinking. Was this not World of Sport time?
It might have been World of Sport time. So actually, Mastiff and Ligero were kind of, because ITV had started to get ready to start producing World of Sport, and
Gibson
Ligero
was
and
on
Mastiff.
that, right?
Gibson had also been on that.
Yeah.
So it looked like there was a lot of, at the time, I think they just referred to it as a lot of guys were being signed up. Are you going to be Team Blue or Team Red? Team Blue referring to World of Sport and Team Red referring to WWE UK. And I think at the time, Ligero and Mastiff had certainly gone and recorded the New Year special of World of Sport, which aired on ITV New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. And it looked like that's where they were going to go. Although I think, and I'm not, please don't quote me on this, I got the impression that Ligero and Dave kind of used that as leverage to get to WWE. Like, they always wanted to be WWE bound, and it was kind of like, well, let's go do World of Sport, and that kind of, and Zach Gibson as well. And I think it became WWE was like, oh, actually, we want to get hold of them. So that's how they ended up then switching over to WWE and ended up there eventually in NXT UK.
I think it was particularly Zach was always a guy that Progress was very high on. He'd been on the very first show back in a very, very different
long hair. Zach Gibson was
Diamond Zach Gibson, is that it?
Something like that. Yeah.
He was always someone but he'd been on WWE's radar before the WWE UK tournament was a thing, and I think he's talked about this on podcasts. But I'm not saying this as I know it. I'm saying this as I think I heard him say it. That I think he maybe spoke to William Regal about it, because Regal was very high on him, and it was maybe felt that coming in with all those other guys wasn't necessarily the best thing for him, and doing World of Sport now was probably the best way to the WWE in the end.
Right.
So Gibson, but I remember Gibson talking about that first taping, and him having to like tell the production people how to cut wrestling, because they just had no idea. They were just ITV people. So they had to like produce the TV show themselves.
Well, it worked out for him, I guess, in the end. Maybe.
I don't know if there was anything writing Ligero and Mastiff off. I think they were just higher on Gibson and Cruz, and Cruz was going to be in Strong Style that year. And
right. Was the idea for Cruz and Gibson to stay together as a tag team? So obviously Gibson would go with James Drake, but was the original plan maybe with Cruz?
I think it was certainly Nathan's intention.
Right.
From what I recall.
But I believe I believe that wasn't his decision to split up, and I think that was a point where Nathan elected to leave Progress. He decided to walk away, and they let him cut a really good promo on his way out that got paid off finally, like 2022 or something, I think, when he came back. Because he did a Strong Style quite recently, last couple of years.
Okay.
I don't follow Progress as much these days, but Yeah, Nathan walked away, and then Zach went on to form the tag team with James Drake. I think because they were very high on James Drake, and again he was a WWE guy. They saw he'd had a lot of wins on these shows. He just sort of comes out as a very sort of silent, brooding, long-haired guy.
Right.
I think they were quite keen to pair him with Zach because of Zach's charisma, and also their styles really worked together well. And I think it was their idea to want to team because they're long-time friends. But I think Progress were keen to capitalize on it.
I mean, they had the chemistry, so it definitely worked out. So
and they ended up arguably being one of the most important tag teams in Progress history, like 3 or 4 time tag team champions, I think now.
And I think for me, they carried the tag team into the belt era of the Progress tag teams. Like that for me, because you had the tag teams who created the Shield era of the tag team division, but for me, there you go, look, perfect. So the London Riots, FSU kind of were the Shield era. But by the time the belts arrived, I really felt like the team I associate them most with was the Grizzled Young Vets. So I think they were the team that kind of carried them into that next phase of Progress.
Yeah, they were brought in by BSS, and then CCK took them, and then CCK ended up dropping them to the Vets. I think when Lycos got hurt in a match, called an audible. And
I did always love, by the way, the tag team belt design because it paid homage and tribute to the Shields.
Those were really sharp, though. They were really sharp.
Oh yeah,
they were legit sharp. The pointy bits of the yin and yang, really sharp.
It's like reptile skin. It looks like.
Yeah, but what they should have done, they should have made it as a whole circle with like a bit of black ceramic running down the middle. But those were legit just 2 separate halves. Those 2 bits of metal were actually 2 halves. So that sharp pointy bit at the top of the end of the yin yang were legit deadly. They were legit sharp and deadly.
I'm sure that's what they've done with the newest belts that they have. They've got a solid round piece.
The new belts, the
soften them up a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, the new ones they do is just a solid circle with a sort of a black piece of metal running through the middle. So, but they were brilliant. I loved it. But like I said, I loved that it paid tribute to the Shield.
Beautiful belts.
And you can't really beat, for all we hate on the Shields, you can't beat that moment at Chapter 12 of Mark and Eddie putting them together for that first
amazing.
Match.
It's the only good thing for that Shield game. It was funny. I forget who it was. Some team won the Shield, and then they like tried to do that, but it was like upside down, and they like couldn't figure out. Oh no, you get on this side. No, you grab this one. So it had its moments.
Brilliant.
Had its moments.
I think that might have been the first one they fixed it out, and they fixed it.
Yeah.
That was 3 in the 3-way. Same first ballroom show we talked about earlier. Project Eagle, Chris Travis. Whenever I reminisce about Brit Wrest from this period, I always think about Chris Travis because, man, you want to talk about someone who could be mixing it up with all these guys who've gone on to huge things. Chris Travis was incredibly talented. He's obviously long gone by this point. Had died not long before the Brixton show, I believe.
It was about a year before this show we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. And we done the tribute of Brixton, but I always think he would have been. I remember seeing him wrestle Chris Masters in Preston, and you wouldn't think that would be great, but it was.
Yeah, it seems like a very random match, but I can see that being good. That sounds fun.
When you get to your Preston City Wrestling rewatch.
All right, let me note this down.
Did you ever work for? Did you ever work for Stephen Flutter?
Me? No, I never actually ended up doing there was a couple of times we came close to getting booked on a PCW show, but it just never panned out.
What a shame. What a shame. But
Chris Masters versus Chris Travis and John Morrison versus Noam Dar.
Let me fire that up. I'll put that in my bank. I'll add it to the list. Yeah. It's on there. The belt period, though, the tag belt era begins here, Chapter 46, where old Trent Seven, Tyler Bate, they kicked those Shields to the curb. They've always hated them, so now they've had belts made. And finally, we have tag team belts. I never really understood why that was why that was the story, was that BSS had got them made, because that's such a babyface thing to do. Well, I feel like the crowd kind of liked the Shield. If the Progress fans are a little, I don't know.
They instantly fought for the belts.
I guess, yeah, but I don't know. I guess they were cool. British Strong Style was. I don't know. Maybe it was just. I don't know. They didn't like the Shields. No, maybe they just shoot. Maybe that wasn't even a story. Maybe they just got belts made.
I don't know why. I don't know why. Something in the back of my brain just seems to think that I seem to remember Trent genuinely quite hating the Shields. I'm pretty sure that was genuine. So. That he just.
Because there was a running gag for months before they've come out and just throw them on the ground.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that this all came about because he genuinely hated the Shields, and when he came out with the Shields, would like talk shit to Glenn about how much he hated the Shields.
He would walk over to commentary, wouldn't he? He would actually walk over to the commentary desk and just talk shit on them. So,
and it's sort of he was doing it on the stage, so it's part of the show. And then they eventually did do belts. I think they were always planning to do belts.
Yeah,
because I think I believe the London Riots were promised belts.
That's who it was, I think, who won the Shield and like didn't know how to put it together.
Probably, yeah.
I think they were promised belts. But they never got them in time.
But British Strong Style here, they have a couple defenses this month. They defend against the South Pacific Power Trip the first night, which was a great match. And then they defend against the Hunter Brothers the second night. And as you can see here, paying homage to old Trips, double pedigrees. So really playing into that, we're above you. They see Progress as a stepping stone. Pete is doing the same deal. So I kind of like, it's very similar like CM Punk back in the day when he was leaving Ring of Honor, going to WWE. So always a good source of heat, but they were having good matches in the process. So I had no issue with it.
Do you know what? This is so funny. When you said wearing a WWE polo shirt earlier, it made me think of the fact that Glenn always used to wear his WWE shorts. So I think they were just the comfiest item of clothing he'd ever been given.
Right.
So you just used to wear those shorts all the time.
Tyler Bate had the
probably did some
later.
Did some runouts on shows wearing them that you can see. So.
Probably, yeah, absolutely.
What a guy!
But yeah, I love them coming out with the jacket, and there's the promo on the Strong Style night 1 with Trent and Matt Riddle, where he talks about because Matt Riddle had been saying some stuff online about Brock Lesnar, I think, and Trent talked about Brock Lesnar being a colleague of his and that he could call him and like this whole promo, and then Riddle knocks him out in 6 seconds and is the main event of night 1. That was all Trent, if I remember rightly. But yeah, Trent was so good with that.
Yeah, no, he just he played into it. The one I think it was this match here where he goes over to Smallman. He's like, "Hey, in my intro, say that this is dedicated to my buddy Trips."
Yeah,
which is just to call him Trips is such a cocky thing to do. I don't know, but
I'm wondering when I'm sure there was a match with was it British Strong Style or was it? I feel like the Origin were in there where there was a Christmas card from your friends at ITV, which again reminds me of that Red versus Blue Wars.
Yeah,
right.
There were always gags about that sort of. I mean, it always made me laugh. I remember the Strong Style that Kyle O'Reilly did. Lykos does the Wasteman, and he goes on about the Indies because Trevor Lee is doing that gimmick at that point. He does that on a Strong Style weekend, wearing the NXT zip up jacket to wrestle Aerostar.
Not a button up. It'd be funnier if it was like a button up.
Yeah,
something about the polo is just so like corporate and just.
It is, isn't it? You don't get more corporate than the polo.
It's not a t-shirt. It's not a hat. It's a polo.
Yeah, polo.
What about bum bag? How would that look? A WWE bum bag.
A bum bag. Yeah, you're gonna put your drawing pins in there. And put it into your trolley.
Trevor got all his merch money in there.
Right.
Very Strong Style were moving back in the days.
Well, speaking of something else that was moving, was women's wrestling. Finally, at this point, 2017, I think I forget where exactly in WWE land we're at, but I think we're in like NXT is starting to really pop off. And
has Stephanie McMahon invented women yet?
Right. She brought him out for the very first time.
Yeah.
Finally allowed to wrestle. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Steph. But Progress.
Progress invented women on the first Strong Style.
Did they invent them before WWE?
I think,
Who has the copyright on women?
It's been progress.
Probably
I'm sure
people
it's
with the most
progress.
money. But yeah, I mean, like that Ginny Polly hardcore match was on the first Strong Style.
That's right.
We'd had sporadic women's matches, primarily with just Ginny, Tony, and Ginny, Polly, and Tony. We'd done some mixed tags, and then Liv had come over, Dolly Black. So it got to the point where there were enough women that Progress wanted to use. They wanted to do the tournament with the belt. But they were very hesitant about it. And I remember, I think it always being anxiety about how the audience would accept it.
I mean, they were right. They were when they announced the first women's title, they're gonna have a tournament. I mean, the crowd was on their feet, so they seemed to be accepting of it.
Yeah, but I think if you watch that first show, they did the women's match. I think Smallman does a lot of G'ing up the crowd, a lot of work on the crowd to get them to accept it and welcome it, and to be a good, because I'm pretty sure in that match there were some like bad comments, but got shouted down by other people in the crowd. That stuff did happen, and I think that was the concern around bringing women into Progress, was whether or not the fan base that they'd created and the environment.
And it sounds wild to think about it now, but I really don't. At the time, I seem just to remember. Even I know we're talking only 2016. We're talking, just over 10 years ago. But the attitudes towards women wrestling still really sucked, didn't it? Even then, and I do remember the trepidation around Polly and Ginny having that first match, because it was like, if this is not good in any way, it's going to set women's wrestling back, and even the phrase women's wrestling is a bit daft now. Anyway, it's just wrestling. But there was a lot of trepidation going into it, because, and that's daft that even just 10 years ago, women's wrestling was still struggling to be accepted. Whereas, now we can have a WrestleMania main event, which is two women, and no one cares either way. It's great. We'll that's absolutely fine. So I think, like most walks of life, the women had to work 3 times as hard as the guys just to get on the show, just to be accepted on the show, to have their matches accepted. And now, again, you fast forward 10 years later, I think Toni Storm is one of the most brilliant characters of recent time. I don't watch a lot of AEW, but I do enjoy Toni Storm's character. I think she's found a brilliant niche there for that. The timeless Toni Storm stuff.
Funny you bring her up. She's wrestling here against Dahlia Black, fighting in the semifinals of that tournament to crown the first ever women's champion here in Progress. Again,
a very different looking Toni Storm.
This is actually very early, like rocker.
I would say, was she sort of surfer Toni Storm still?
No, she was rocker by this point. But yeah, when she only first started in Progress,
into it though. Yeah,
I remember when she was just smiley babyface Toni Storm,
coming out to like Avicii or something. I forget what she. I don't know. Yeah,
but like really day glow, wasn't she? Started off in that really bright day glow gear. I think that's why I referred to as surfer Storm.
Yeah, she just started doing the rocker thing, and this theme bangs. By the way, this was one of those ones that had been submitted to Progress when they put out a call, because Progress was like a hot brand in the UK. So indie bands, do you want to get your music on Progress? A bunch of people signed up, and one of them was this band that did Tony's theme. And it's an awesome theme.
Yeah, really good. I mean, she's already, captured what the gimmick is at this point, and Lord only knows what she will go on to accomplish less than a decade after this. But very early Toni Storm here is really fun to see. She gets the win. Moves on to the finals.
Still in her early 20s here, I think, probably.
Oh, yeah, she's got to be,
She's not quite as young as Will, but not far off, maybe. I don't know. She's, still barely in her prime.
Dude, she's not even in her 30s yet.
She's not even in her... Oh, God.
She's 29 years old today.
Huh? Had she been to Japan at this point and had a run in Japan?
She definitely had by the time she wins the belt. So I think she was going to Japan at this point.
If she did, it's not on the Wikipedia. Oh, no, yeah, Stardom 2016. Yep.
Yeah, so she'd gone the previous year. So I remember when she won the belt, she had the black and white gear with the Progress logo on one knee pad and the Mid-Breath Gym logo in Japan. It was the place she trained at in Japan on her other knee pad, I think. I might be misremembering that, but
I mean, it worked out for whatever it is. And
Sure.
I mean, got a shout out also Ginny versus Nixon Newell on the
This
chapter
this
45.
match is one of my favorite Progress women's matches. I think it's
I had pretty much the same note. I've only seen up to this point,
Yeah.
but it's definitely my favorite women's match I've seen from Progress to this point.
it didn't get enough love at the time because just everything was going on with the men's division was so hot. But that match, I mean, Nixon was awesome. She was always awesome, and obviously she ends up.
Tegan Knox, for anybody unfamiliar.
Yes.
Just,
Well, now Nixon Newell again. She's back on the Indies.
yeah, exactly.
Coming out to C'est La Vie.
Oh, is she now?
Yeah, she did
yeah.
she did an attack show, and her and Mark teamed, and she came out to C'est La Vie still.
Love it.
Yeah, she's
here.
She's incredible.
2017 moving. I mean, it's pre all the injuries. So I mean, the way she's so crisp and coming off the top with cross bodies. I mean, everything looks so good from both women.
Can we talk about Ginny a bit? Because Ross,
please.
I feel like you had quite a bit of a hand in training
No,
Ginny.
I mean,
and Ginny,
I never trained
Ginny to
but I
me
kind
is
of-
one of like the kind of missed, because she ended up retiring because of injuries, and she did WWE NXT UK, but never got to go to the main roster. And I think always had that potential.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously now she's Mrs. Gunther.
Mrs. Gunther, yeah.
Mrs. Gunther, of course. Yeah, Ginny. I mean, like I never really had any direct hand in training Ginny, but I was around when she started. And you know, and I remember just going to a training seminar, one of the training when it was the Progress Training School, and she was quite new to it then, and they were just working through chain wrestling, and she was so good at it, and she was so crisp and so clean, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually looking at an Asian woman who, you know, can wrestle, and I was like, she's fantastic, and I was saying to her, you know, have you thought about a Bollywood gimmick and all that, you know, and she was like, oh no, I got this idea for this fashionista gimmick, and I was like, oh okay. And then I saw her do it, and I was like, oh, okay, that's really good, actually. She's like, and she was very, you know, and again, she did something very different. And I think the original Ginny, which came up through Endeavour, she came up through the Progress Endeavour shows, didn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Was a great character.
That's when the women started.
Yeah, because the women started in Endeavour. And playing that heel bitch, like, she was phenomenal at it, and she was great, and she kept cutting her teeth doing stuff like that, and she literally was like, I want to see her I want to watch someone else beat her up because she's such a heel. And again, you know, and I really thought she was going to be very big once she got to NXT UK. I was like, oh, okay, I think she's going to be a real player in the women's division. And I think, again, as you said, unfortunately, just through injury, and you know, and then obviously somewhere down the line in there, her relationship with Gunther blossomed, and you know, they're married now with a child, and which is absolutely fantastic. But I think for the time Ginny was in it, I think she made some huge waves and was, you know, was a great villain, a great you know. For me, I don't think you ever could have seen her as a babyface. I just don't think she ever would have worked as a babyface. She was one of those people who was like, you are a great villain, you will always be a villain.
Ginny was one of the great characters of Progress, especially in this era. You know, in that same way, we just the sort of acting and performance of it is on another level, and she would throw herself about in matches happily. Yeah, I think she was someone who really could have done something. But it's interesting because I remember being, when they eventually Tony wins the belt, I remember being like genuinely quick because Ginny had come up through Progress. I was quite annoyed that she didn't win the belt. I wanted her to win the title.
I mean,
she did eventually.
Of the women's division, she's the star for sure.
She did eventually win it from Tony in a main event of a big show, so you know, probably worked out in the end. But yeah, Ginny, and I feel like I say this about a lot of people in wrestling, but like the nicest human being, honestly. Like, for all she played a horrible person in wrestling, she was the very nicest human being.
She could be scathing on the mic, though, man. I mean, she's like, nobody commits to it like she does at this point. So,
but a truly wonderful human being. So I'm so glad she's happily Mrs. Gunther and married with kids and live a loving life in America.
In her own right. Yeah. Like, I was introduced to Ginny through NXT UK. That was the first I saw her, and I know I could acknowledge that she was good, but she never like captured me like she does here for whatever reason.
It wasn't her best work, and I'm not saying that's her fault, but NXT
Sure,
UK, I don't think was a good reflection of how good she was. Like,
Yeah,
to really understand Ginny and everything she could do, you have to watch Progress.
Yeah, for this unfiltered version of Ginny. I mean, from the moment she came out, I think it was like chapter 18 or something where they had the first women's chapter match. She's progressed to this point. And yeah.
The stuff with her and Laura was always so magic.
Lord, yeah. Elizabeth at the time, or her assistant. And
we recently
Laura
retired.
recently retired as well.
Happy retirement to Laura Di Matteo. Another underrated women's wrestler this time.
They're not doing it properly. None of them are doing it. They're all staying retired. They're not doing it properly.
You could teach them how to find the loophole and get out of there, right?
Totally.
But yeah, to shout out that Ginny Nixon Newell match. Ginny gets the win. Well, she actually hits this. I don't know what the move is called, but it's when the other girl's in the corner, like Shattered Dream style, and then she smashes their head into the mat. A makeover or something. She hits it here, and Nixon lands right on the top of her head. It looked nasty. I don't know how it wasn't the finish, but Ginny follows it up with a Canadian Destroyer and gets the win. She also yelled before she hits it. She's like, "Not this time, you Welsh slut!" I think it's very rude, but it is what it is.
Love Ginny. She's the best.
Yeah, love Ginny. Shout out Tegan or Nixon Newell, I guess, back again. And I think last thing we could talk about, unless you guys have anything else, but I think we close out maybe with Pete Dunne, Mark Andrews, closing out night 2 for the Progress title. Obviously, we talked earlier about Mark Andrews, Will Ospreay from the previous week. Mark Andrews beat him. Pete Dunne obviously is on this title run. Mark Andrews also the Thunder Bastard at this point, so that's how he got this title match. They do a really good video package before this match where they show their history of matches that Pete and Andrews have had. They wrestled in the UK tournament in WWE. They wrestled on NXT, but they've also wrestled like in PWG. They were showing footage from like somebody's backyard. They were wrestling from like 10 years ago.
I'm pretty sure Mark was in Pete's first ever wrestling match.
I think 14. You say that during this match. I think that's one of your nuggets in this match.
Oh, is it? Interesting. I'm pretty sure one of them said on the podcast.
Wouldn't surprise me because, I mean, all of those guys all came up around. I mean, obviously, Mark and Eddie are from Wales, but they came up within the sort of Birmingham Wolverhampton scene.
The Wales Birmingham connection.
Yeah. And these guys
was huge in the scene at the time. It really was.
Yeah. Massive. So these guys, them, Trent, the Hunters, all of those guys all came up together from around that scene, and obviously, Mark and Pete having such a storied history going into this match, and again, and they had done the WWE UK match.
Yeah, it's pretty fresh off of it. Yeah,
no, it's not far removed. So you got two guys who just know each other really, really well. They know all their beats. They know all the things they're going to do, and have got good chemistry together because they've been around each other so long. So. And as I said, I think I really enjoyed Pete at this time. He was the next heel champ that Progress needed. I think the faces needed to chase, and I think Pete always did a really good job of that as well. And again, Mark was always that. He turned out to be the guy who was always chasing, and he never got to the big one. Which again, I think Callum was right. I think that was a real shame that we never really got a Mark Andrews title win. That we kind of always.
We did on this show for like less time than the first one.
Yeah,
really teasing us with this.
Yeah, man. This was sorry, I completely lost my thought. But yes, they knew each other very well, and they'd had the matches early on. It was interesting to see that WWEification of it as well. Again, we talked about the using the footage in the promo video, like that's allowed. And yeah, sorry, this is what I was going to say. I lost the thread. Last time I was on, we talked about Chapter 39, which was when Pete won the belt.
Right.
And that was, I think he was on WWE's radar at that point, but that was before everything that was to come in the next 2 years for him with WWE. And born out of kind of scrambling because Haskins was injured and had to step away. They had a tough decision to make and we talked about the last time that after the previous show finished, they'd sort of figured out they were going to do all the matches go into the main event thingy,
Mm-hmm.
but they hadn't decided who was going to win the belt yet. They didn't know. That was a decision because the Haskins stepping away was only like a couple of days before the show, I think.
Really?
So it was, it wasn't like it was long planned to make Pete Dunne the champion in November of 2016. But what decision it turned out to be.
It worked out, I would say. Because it's when he won the title, like maybe 2 years previous to that, he was Dynamite Pete Dunne with the goofy pants and the whatever, and with the short hair. And it's crazy how quick he's become the superstar for Progress.
He wins the belt, and within 6 weeks, he's announced as like the face of the WWE UK brand.
Right? Yeah, and it's another guy. Like I didn't know of him until I saw him on WWE TV, but he immediately captured. Like I immediately recognized how good this guy was, and he's still going at it today. So shout out to him.
Yeah, and I think forever I will mostly associate the WWE UK or / NXT UK Championship with Pete Dunne. For me, that belt is really synonymous with him. And I think Volta probably held it longer due to the pandemic. But when I think of that belt, the first person I think of is Pete. And that was a gorgeous belt of all the WWE belts. And
one of the best looking belts they've ever put out.
Yeah, not a lot of WWE belts are that nice these days, but that UK belt was something else. And we saw it a couple of times backstage. I remember seeing it sort of just,
Did you touch it?
Oh hell yeah, of course.
How's it feel?
If proper weight, I mean, it had such a weight to it, and it was so well made, such a fantastic belt.
It was quite something at this point, and we'll at some point get to not even, I don't know, but when Tyler and Trent win the NXT, the main NXT tag titles, they come out with them on a Progress show after the Raw show, and it all starts getting very, very incestuous.
Right. Yeah. But in this match here, it's a good match. I mean, like you said, these guys have crazy chemistry. They've had, I think Callum, say in this match, this is like their 75th match against each other. So I
was good at looking at cage match. That was one of my specials.
Right? So it's like at some point, it's like they gotta feel like it's hard to come up with new stuff to do with each other at some point. But they're breaking out everything. Andrews does like a reverse 450, like a moonsault version of it, which is insane. We get all the classics, the X-plexes, the Mark Andrews plancha into the Hurricane Rana on the outside. So many poison Ranas in this match, but ultimately the ref gets kicked in the face by I think it's Andrews, and this is when that goddamn mustache mountain comes out. Trent sporting the WWE polo, Tyler with the WWE shorts. They charge the ring. Trent hits Andrews with the spinning pile driver. New referee, 2 count. The new referee kicks Mustache Mountain out of there. And then we get Pete hitting a tombstone, or he goes for a tombstone, but Mark Andrews does this crazy counter into like a, I guess, reverse Canadian Destroyer, like a reverse sit-out tombstone, but a flipping version. And then Mark Andrews goes for the Vertebreaker. Doesn't quite hit it the first time. He kind of does, but it wasn't clean. And given that this was the finish, they did it again. Andrews hits Pete with the Vertebreaker with the 1, 2, 3. So he wins. But I think even the crowd understood, like, Pete's foot is under the rope. There's no way they're going to let this slide. So it's almost like kind of a weird, like, half celebration because they play Mark's music. They introduce him as a new world champion.
He's celebrating with the
bell.
bell.
Nuts. I mean,
did we do a good job?
These dumb fucking commentators don't even see his foot under the rope. So
because I truly remember feeling like my heart was not in it.
Yeah, no, even Jim Smallman's like, and the new Progress champion. And then he like remembers he has to be excited. And he goes, Mark! And then he like cuts into it. But like most of the crowd understands that they're going to restart it. And they eventually do. The second ref who had come to at this point, Chris Roberts, was like, no. His foot was under the rope. Let's restart the match. So they do. Pete right at the bell with a blindside forearm. But then Mark Andrews encounters with the Hurricane Rana. And then it's like a now it's at this point. Now the crowd's like, oh, this might be the actual finish. But it wasn't. Pete hits the bitter end. Another close 2 count. So they really kicked it into a good gear here towards the end. Mark Andrews hits the Stun Dog Millionaire, followed by the Shooting Star. And at this point, I was like, oh shit, is he actually going to win it? But he does not. It's only a 2 count. And then Pete's able to... Mark goes for another Shooting Star, but Pete catches him out of midair with a forearm to the face and then hits the bitter end and retains the title. So old Peter walks out, still champion. And again, we are just the edging of a Mark Andrews title run. It continues and don't quite get it here. So, but I thought this was
never going to pay off.
Yeah, which is a shame. This kind of made you want it a little bit. Yeah.
It did make me want it. He did get Eddie tried to hand him the belt at one point. Just after that was just for the pandemic.
Wow.
After we were there at chapter 100.
Interesting. Yeah, but we're still trucking along here with old British strong style. Can't complain about that, I suppose. But yeah, anything else that we didn't cover from these chapters, gentlemen?
I mean, truly, in the transition from Origin to BSS is really about the music. Because
they can't use Metallica anymore, so it's like, let's get this Origin out of here.
Well, not in that way, just in the sense that like it used to be you'd hear the Origin music 6 times a show, and then you'll end up hearing British Strong Style's music 6 times a show.
Mm-hmm. Which it is kind of weird here, because obviously Pete's coming out to his WWE music, which is fine, but also Tyler and Trent both come out to Pete Dunne's music, which is kind of like, if I was only accustomed to it, I got introduced to it through WWE, so it's jarring to see.
Well, he wasn't going to be using the Sledgehammer ripoff that they made for him, was he? And he was a heel. So yeah.
So the amount of times we sat and had to listen to "Love Is Blinding" is just
dude. Jack White is so good. Like I hated it the first time I heard it, but it was
because they used to take their time on their entrances so much as well. So we'd have to listen to the whole song.
That and the Metallica song for the Origin both have like a minute-long intros.
Long intros.
You hear them 3 times a show. It's like, all right, enough.
Yeah.
Even if it's Bob Seger, but
that's it.
That's about all I got for you guys. Appreciate you guys coming on here, talking to Progress.
That was great. I mean, me and Callum were reminiscing earlier, though, just the way we had a blast together on commentary. We always had a really good laugh. We really enjoyed it. And I think, and obviously there were times where it would just be me and Glenn. It'd be times it was just Glenn and Callum. And then, there were times we managed to get it done. And I think we were always quite good at shifting the dynamics depending on the pairings, and then obviously we got to do it as a 3 every now and again, which is great. And I just and I still live in fear that in the world there exists the audio tracks which didn't make it to the program where they kept recording while we were off camera and things we used to say. So somewhere they exist. There's a lot of dirt there somewhere.
It's probably best it stays.
It's best buried.
My favorite line of your commentary is forever immortalized, which is good. This is the Origin FSU hardcore match in Manchester, and I can't remember who it was, but one wrestler hits another wrestler with a shoe. Do you remember what you said?
I do remember what I said. I referred to it as old school Caribbean parenting, which is when you beat someone with a shoe.
On the pre-show, I think you made a reference because somebody brought a belt. And you were like,
we did do that again.
I think you said that exact same. Yeah.
Did a callback.
Put it on a t-shirt. Why don't you?
No, yeah.
Reminds me I need to ring my mum later.
We did, that was my first ever commentary show was with you, the first Manchester show. First thing I'd ever really done working in wrestling. I had no idea how behind the scenes of wrestling worked. And Russ was always super kind to me, and obviously we've been good friends ever since. It's been a long time. We haven't seen each other in ages.
It has been a long time.
I will make the effort.
But I mean, this year. Yeah, that's it. No, I've got 2 of them. Yeah, I got another one on the way, and But I think 2017 was a really important year because it was such a tonal shift with where Progress had been, and we were now in the new era, firmly into the new era of Progress. We were heading into WWE territory. And again, me and Callum, we covered every show that year that took place pretty much. I think there was very few that we didn't do, but it was what also in a sad way, because obviously that's by the tail end of 2017, we'd started the IVF to have Jasmine. So by the end of that year of 2017 is when I bowed out and never really returned to the Progress commentary from that point. So me and Callum never really got to work together again in that sense. But it was a great year. I remember it being a really hot year for wrestling, for British wrestling. People really started turning their eyes in 2017 to British wrestling, and obviously, you see what came out of it. So it always holds a really fun place in my heart that year, just because wrestling was super. And even though I wasn't really, I mean, I'd been back in the ring about a year. I've been back in the ring, but watching what was going on was super hot, and it was a really good time.
I mean, the actual first thing that I did for Progress was for your first retirement. When we did that online, we did that Facebook Live thing.
That's right.
With you and Sticks, that I moderated, like an online Q&A discussion with them before that retirement match, which was a lot of fun.
It's pretty harsh words you guys were throwing at each other.
That's right. That's right.
A little rude. You were a little rude there, but I'll let it slide. Something about he said something about somebody said something about rolling a pram around.
Yeah, that was me. I made a comment about him because his daughter.
He had kids by that point.
Yeah, his daughter had been born earlier that year. So
I was watching it. I was like, "What's a pram?" So I was a little confused, but that didn't really translate. But no, it was good stuff. And for real though, I do enjoy your guys' commentary work from this period. It's such a hot period for wrestling with a bunch of stars. That the WWE World Champions on these shows. You got Tony Storm, Will Ospreay. I mean, it's just filled with top people in today's world. But speaking of today, where can people find you? I mean, I know RJ, you said you're kind of heading towards your 8th retirement here.
Oh, 100%. So yeah. So I mean, as soon as this goes out, this is kind of the big first public announcement that I'm actually, that we're actually expecting another child. So there you go. So this is one way for everyone to find out. So I am taking a bit of a break. I mean, I am still ring active, not as much as I used to be, because I'm now heading towards my 44th birthday in a couple of months. But I am still ring active. I'm on Twitter as at RJ Singh King, or on Instagram as King RJ Singh. But I am taking a bit of a break this year, obviously, because we have a child on the way, and I've no idea how that's going to affect my life. I've known since 2018. Being a dad in 2018 and now expecting another one. So it's but I'm always going to be around wrestling. I still love wrestling. I still hold wrestling in my heart all the time. So I'm looking excited towards new adventures. But yeah, I'm never far from wrestling. Put it that way.
Still got DDTs for some people.
Oh, absolutely. There's DDTs for everybody because it is a finishing move. It is a finishing move.
We'll spread the word here. Callum, I think last time you were on, you actively said people don't follow you, for people not to follow you. Is that still the case?
I'm having internet problems, so I'm going to turn my camera.
Are you there?
Is that in trouble?
Yeah, don't find me.
I thought you just
I'm here.
was befuddled at what I said. I was like, did I strike a nerve?
Yeah. Look, he's hiding. He doesn't want you to find him at all. He doesn't even want you to see him right now.
Yeah.
So.
Can you hear me now?
This is like when Will came out to shoot some people. He's faded to the background. Yeah,
I've had my neck twisted off.
We just can't see.
Yes, no, don't.
You've gone full John Cena. We can't see you.
Yeah, don't find me.
It's all right.
No, I mean, this was a very special time in my life to be involved in something so incredible. That I had no business being involved in, having no skills whatsoever. I actually, with two of my oldest esports friends, because we were talking about my esports career before, I've been watching wrestling with them on a Thursday night over Discord every week for like 3 years at this point. We're about to finish up with Lucha Underground, which goes off a cliff.
Yeah, dude. That's when it's
we're about to cycle into a 2010. Yeah, I'd like to cycle into a 2010s New Japan rewatch. So wrestling's always, and I watch AEW every week. I've been to all the Wembley shows, so wrestling's still a huge part of my life. And I have my shelf of people that I can claim to have had some professional association with.
Well, we can't see it anymore, so
It's
No.
just a shelf of Ludwig Kaiser figures. That's all it is. It's an entire shelf of just Kaiser figures.
Once again, thank you to RJ and Callum for coming on this show. Great time with these guys. Always a hoot whenever I get a chance to talk to my boys RJ and Callum. Go follow them on social media. Actually, I think Callum doesn't want you to. So don't follow Callum, but follow RJ. He's a sweet boy. And I think that's about it. Appreciate you guys sticking around, listening to this whole thing. I know it was a long one, but it was fun hearing these guys reminisce with each other and tweedle each other's nips, and I just kind of sat in the cuck chair. But that's what it is. No, it was a great time with those guys, and yeah, I think that's all I got for you guys. Appreciate you guys once again for tuning in. Have a blessed day. Love ya. Mwah.
Yeah.
I'm hard.
It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started.